Hello everybody and welcome to the Jenny Connor character profile. This is the YouTube double feature where we have got two recordings, one that we've just done this past week and one that was recorded back in 2015 when Jenny first made her return to the street. We did a character profile of her then. We didn't really know a whole lot about the character and we certainly didn't realise what a absolute gem and a favourite of ours she would become. So if you want to listen to that one first, you can just carry on listening when I finish talking. If you want to skip it, get on to the new stuff, just go about 15 minutes. I'll put the chapters in the recording and then you can hear what we've got to say about Jenny now. But she is obviously a huge favourite of ours. We absolutely adored reminiscing about her past. So here you go, a double whammy of Jenny Connor character profiles recorded a decade apart. Enjoy. So it's character profile time now, and of course who else could we do this week but Jenny Bradley, who's made a return to the cobbles this week. Triumphant
She's
return.
Back.
Too early to say? I don't know.
Who knows whether it's triumphant?
I'm happy to see her back in it. I watched some of the old episodes with her in. I don't know whether I can say I liked her or whether she's supposed to be likeable, but I mean, it's hard
to say at the moment, isn't it?
She seems nice enough at the moment.
Seems nice.
Has she got over her nasty patch? I mean, it's all going to come to light next week when Rita gets back from the lakes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. Now, for anyone who doesn't know anything about Jenny Bradley before, or just wants a quick recap,
refresh.
This is what has happened to her. Well, she was born on the 13th of March 1971 to Alan and Pat Bradley. She first appeared on Corrie on the 6th of January 1986, and up until this week, her last appearance on Corrie was on the 8th of October 1993. She has been in 296 episodes so far, and she is played by Sally Ann Matthews, who's doing the publicity circuit at the moment.
She's a jobbing actress.
Yes, we watched her on This Morning.
Where she said, everyone going, what have you been doing for the last, was it 20 years?
21 years.
And she's like, I have been doing stuff, actually. It's like, all right, no one cares though.
Yeah, theatre and, well, she said a load of TV roles as well, but I haven't seen her. But we don't watch her.
You don't watch television.
Don't remember seeing her on the bill.
Right, so this is her backstory. In 1980, her dad yearned the single life, left the family, filed for divorce, and left her mum Pat to raise Jenny by herself.
Yes, this is obviously off screen. This is when Jenny was 18 or so.
Her backstory.
Yes, that Alan left, and Jenny was living with her mum. But that all went wrong because in 1986, when she first appeared on the street, she was a paper girl in the cabin, and her mum Pat was knocked down and killed by a car in Rosamond Street.
Aww.
I don't think that could really happen these days because Rosamond Street's is about 10 metres long.
I know, where would it go?
I don't think there's enough time to get some speed up along there.
I know, it's you would think that it would be full of people getting confused and trying to reverse around the corner to escape this horrible dead end.
Yeah, back in the days when Rosamond Street was actually a very long street.
Going, ooh, there's a gym there. Anyway, let's get out of the way.
So Rita, the kind-hearted soul that she was back then, agreed to foster Jenny because she was going to a children's home. She was put in a children's home, but she kept on running away to it. From it, yes.
She was happy to live with Rita, but she didn't want to live with her dad in Leeds.
Yeah, because Alan then turned up and was like, well,
I don't want to live with you. But Rita reunited the pair and she ended up falling for Alan at the same time. So it's almost like the beginning of a beautiful ending to some troubled...
Well, this was one of Corrie's longest storylines. I mean, I don't know whether how long this was all planned in advance and everything, but from what we're about to see from the Alan Bradley storyline, it did seem to be one continual... saga, exactly, epic saga from 1986 until the tram crash thing with Alan. So this is how it all began. So nothing to do particularly with Alan Bradley. The next bit, she had a bit of a go on the talent circuit, did Jenny? She thought she was the next. Who was a singer back in the 80s? Madonna? I don't know.
I don't remember.
I think we know from our 80s episodes that we don't actually know anything about that. But she auditioned to Alec Gilroy, who was a talent scout kind of back then. But Alan refused to let her take it any further because Rita told him that Alec was untrustworthy. And that was the first of many things that turned Jenny against Rita.
Aww.
So I think she had been living with Alan then for a bit because then he got a job in Dubai later on that year. So then Jenny had to move back in with Rita again.
How did she pronounce Dubai with a J in it then?
Dubai.
That was very forward thinking of him, wasn't it?
Yes. So she was living with Rita, and then she started to date Martin Platt. She had to kind of bug him for a bit about it because he was so much older than her. He didn't like the age difference. 3 years. This is back in the days when on Coronation Street, 3 years was a mega age difference. That's like 10 years is average now, isn't it?
People have always had age differences, though.
Yeah, and interestingly, I mean, Martin Platt ends up going out with and marrying Gail, doesn't he? Who's 10 years older than him.
Yep.
So he obviously kind of like, well, I'm not going to get anyone my age.
Well, she that year as well, in '86, she won a talent show in Rochdale, and she was driving back with Martin in his car, lost control and caused an accident and left Martin unconscious.
Yeah, she walked out all right. So she wasn't allowed to drive back then. I think she wasn't even 17 at the time. Because she came in as a 14-year-old, so he let her drive his car. And unsurprisingly,
she couldn't do it.
Went over the edge of a little ditch.
Women drivers, eh? In 1987, as we know, she should not have been driving, so she convinced Martin to cover up and take the blame. But when Alan returned and got a bit annoyed at Martin for crashing the car with his precious daughter, she confessed the truth.
Yeah. Now, Alan had a bit of a romantic idea that backfired later in 1987.
It's not really romantic, it's more delusional, isn't it?
He thought it'd be a good idea to get a wedding set up for Rita, and then kind of lure her to the register office and say, ta-da, we're getting married. Unsurprisingly, she didn't like that idea, and she was like, you're playing me for a fool. No, sorry, turned him down. So then, and that's another, again, Jenny had liked the idea of them getting married like that, so once more she's been turned against Rita. She did her O-levels that year. That's the old GCSEs. She got 4 A's, 3 B's and a C.
That's a clever girl.
She decided back then not to take A-levels. She took them eventually, but she thought it'd be a better idea to run off and pick grapes in France with Martin.
Sounds really nice. Martin came back to Weatherfield without her, and she was left alone in France, and she met up with and got engaged to a local student called Patrick Podivin.
Perfect accent. I don't think anybody will notice. Yeah,
Alan didn't like that because that Podivin is a stupid. Jenny Podivin doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
Yeah, Patrick told Jenny that he wanted to wait at least 2 years to get married, and she was like, yeah, okay then. So there's a bit of a whirlwind holiday romance there. But he was back in France. She was back in Weatherfield that Christmas. She seduced her friend Lisa's boyfriend Gary at a party because she was bored of waiting for Patrick. So that didn't last very long.
In 1988, Patrick discovered this.
I'm sure it's not Patrick.
Well, what is it then?
Patrick. Or Patrice.
It should be Patrice, but there's no E.
I don't know.
Patrick discovered Gary and called off the engagement.
Yeah, now Jenny that year also discovered that Alan was having an affair with Carol Burns, who was a client of his. She told Rita, so Rita chucked him out, but he was back later in the year, allegedly for Jenny's sake, but he was actually deciding he wanted to steal the deeds to the house. And I think this was definitely, from this point onwards, Alan Bradley was wrong, and he was a bad lad.
In 1989, she came of age, she turned 18. She came back from a birthday party, very happy, but sadly, Alan was trying to suffocate Rita, and she discovered this.
Yeah, Rita had uncovered Alan's dodgy dealings and confronted him about it, and he tried to strangle her on the sofa, or at least that's what he said. So
we're just wrestling. Alan goes on the run and says, "Oh, could you meet me up with my passport so that I can go on the lam?" She does so, but he gets captured and popped into prison at Her Majesty's leisure.
Obviously, she had decided to take her A-levels at that point, and she passed them in 1989 and decided to take environmental studies at Manchester Polytechnic, which doesn't exist anymore. It's one of these ones that's become a university, like the one down here. I can't remember what it's called now. Alan was out of prison by the end of the year, and Rita suspected that he was stalking her. Jenny accused her of being vindictive and moved out.
Now, by the end of the year, a very exciting thing happened because Alan chased Rita to Blackpool, and in the process, he got hit by a tram.
Yes.
We all know this happened. Even I know this happened, and I've seen it about 500 times.
Millions of times. Even this week, we've probably seen that on the clip shows and everything that many times.
Jenny was tad upset because he died.
Yeah.
And blamed Rita.
Yeah, she was obviously, even though, she knew that Alan had obviously been in the wrong from what he was trying to do to Rita, but she obviously, if you're a young girl and your dad's died, then you want to pin the blame on someone, and it was Rita that had to shoulder that burden. Yeah.
She reconciled with Rita in 1990, moved out of number 7 and into the flat above the cabin, which had also moved.
Yeah, it moved from Rosamond Street.
And she turned the house into student digs with her friend Flick Khan.
Yeah,
Flick Khan sounds like a character out of Star Trek.
Flick Khan, I was reading about her the other day, and I don't remember much about it, but somebody was saying, they were all saying that the Nazirs were the first Muslim family, but the Khans back then were apparently Muslims, not that they did very much.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Who said they were the first Muslim family?
That's Joe Blackburn, probably.
Oh, okay, because we didn't make this information up, did we? Because I would have thought there would have been Muslims in it before now. It's not like we've only just got them in.
No, I think it's to say that they're the first prominent family.
The first sort of like family
unit,
that kind of openly practices their religion.
Yeah, and I don't think the Khans probably, I'm guessing, were ever meant to be like a long-term thing, which seems like the Nazirs are supposed to be at this point anyway. So Flick moved to France towards the end of the year. Angie Freeman took her place in the house, living with Jenny. And then later on in the year, Jenny got expelled from her college course for not working hard enough and threw herself at Mark Casey, who'd been given the garage for his 21st birthday. Then she had another fling in 1991 with a married dentist, behind Mark's back, that is. So she dumped Mark. He called her a slag. She then fell out with Angie and Rita because they weren't happy about this dentist, Robert, being married. Huge row with Rita, basically, and Jenny left Weatherfield with Robert, seemingly to have a happy life together.
No, 1903, she left him and came back to the street and got a job at the Rovers. Then she heard about Rita's inheritance that she'd got because her new husband had died.
Yes, the brain tumour man.
And she said, "Can I have £30,000 to start a beauty salon, please?" And Rita says, "No, you're only interested in me for my money. I'm going to write you a cheque for £1,000, but you don't ask me for anything else. Leave me alone and never come back."
Yeah, that's another clip that we've seen a lot of so far this week, is Rita going, "You'd better be gone by the morning."
See, I wouldn't be. I would still be there going, "No, I want another 29 of these, please. Thanks very much."
Well, even Rita, even Jenny wasn't as rude as you.
1993, 30 grand was a heck of a lot of money. Where's she going to put this salon? In the Knightsbridge or something?
I don't know. But anyway, that is so far what we know of Jenny. And she hasn't said much about what she's been doing in the interim years, has she? Did she set up this beauty salon? I don't know.
Who knows?
Not with £1,000 she didn't, but she went off
maybe she decided to become a mobile salon because you need a very small amount of startup money for that.
And now she's back in Corrie, on a date with Kevin Webster. Her return was confirmed on the 20th of October last year, and I've been looking forward to it ever since. Not that I knew anything about Jenny or anything, but I like having the old characters back, like the nods to the past.
So how would you describe her personality-wise? What would you say about her?
Well, the new Jenny, it's difficult to say, isn't it?
Exactly.
It seems like she's quite kind of flirty and confident and not in your face necessarily.
Nice.
She seems nice enough. She seems like could be quite a good match for Kevin. It remains to be seen whether she's still kind of bearing a huge grudge against Rita, because I mean she's still up in Cartmel with Mavis at the moment, but I assume when she's back next week, they're going to have this confrontation. Rita's not going to be happy to see her, but it's whether or not Jenny's going to try and rebuild the bridges between them, or whether she's going to try and get her own back on Rita still. It's difficult to know.
Yeah.
I'd hope that she isn't still bearing a 21-year-old grudge against an OAP, but this is a soap we're talking about.
Well, it depends on whether she thinks she was in the wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, but so much time has passed. I mean, you don't...
Are they going to keep mentioning it all the time, or are they just going to...
Well, I think so. I mean, there's also... It's interesting that they've got Kevin going out with her, because Sally is obviously very close to Rita, or even more so kind of back then. I think Sally always saw herself as being like next in line to Rita's.
To the Rita's millions.
Yeah, so she's not going to like the idea that her ex-husband and current friend Kevin is now dating somebody who treated Rita so badly back then.
Yeah, that's true.
Because things have been going swimmingly between them and Tim at the moment, hasn't it?
Seems to be all working out quite nicely.
Yeah, no, Rita at the moment is really still a bit of a crotchety old woman, isn't she? That's how she's often written.
Out a bit, has she?
No, I mean, apparently, and I don't really remember this, but a couple of years ago, apparently Jenny was mentioned by Rita. She told someone or other that she's not on speaking terms with Jenny anymore. But I mean, I can't imagine if somebody that I hadn't seen for 21 years, and they obviously did have a lot of good times together, and at one point
Rita would have considered Jenny her daughter in a way. I mean, she's a foster daughter,
exactly,
definitely.
yeah.
So, I don't know. You'd kind of want to say, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" Or
No, I don't know. You'd be weird about it, wouldn't you? You'd sort of like you'd want her to apologise to you, I think.
after everything,
And then if she did, you'd be like, okay, water under the bridge.
yeah, I'd hope she did, but then there's not going to be the drama then, is there? It all depends on whether Jenny's return storyline is about the drama between her and Rita or whatever. I mean, there could be anything
Why
at
bring
all
her back
between
then?
her and Kevin.
And how much are they going to try to dwell on the past? Because they're always going to be thinking, people haven't watched this. It was 1993 when she left. Are we going to bother really raking up the past, or is it going to be too difficult for new viewers?
I think lots of people know about the Alan Bradley storyline and the tram hitting him storyline, don't they? So it's difficult to say, but I mean, she so far seems like a good match for Kevin, and in a way, I want Kevin to settle down with somebody because we don't want him to go back to Sally necessarily now because she's so good with Tim. Why not Jenny? And I don't know how long she's staying for. I mean, I've heard her say that the storyline that she's brought in for has got a definite kind of beginning, middle, and end. As for after that, who knows? Whether or not, I don't know whether she's filmed her ending scenes. I don't know how long this storyline's going to last. But I mean, I'm always happy, like I said, to have old faces back on the street, and why not her? And it gives us another nomination for our Flaming Nora Award at the end of the year, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, so there we go. There's Jenny Bradley. Looking forward to seeing what happens next with that one. Yeah. So that is it for character profile. Any old long-time viewers got any more memories of Jenny they'd like to share? Write in and let us know.
Hello and welcome to this week's bonus podcast where we are doing a character profile revisit of Jenny Connor, the one and only. Lovely Jenny Connor, which is favourite of ours. Tell you what, we need a bit of positivity and talking loveliness about Coronation Street at the moment, I think. And Jenny Connor coming back to her as a character profile for the first time in 10 years is certainly that. Yes, it has been a decade this month since Jenny returned to the cobbles after a 22-year absence, I think it was, and that makes a decade as well since we profiled her last on the podcast. We have talked to her a bit about her on and off since then, haven't we?
There's been a few bits and bobs.
One or two mentions, but we just thought it'd be a good time to go back and have a look at what she's been doing in her second stint on the show. Well, kind of third, really. She's been back a few times, but this is the proper one.
It's quite amazing, really, from cleaner to Rover's return.
She's had a bit of a journey that we're going to be going through. This isn't going to be...
Quite a CV, that is.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about what she got up to in the 80s and early 90s.
No,
She's done that one already. Go and listen to the old one if you want to listen to that. And this is going to be long enough as it is. I did listen to it the other day, and it's just so funny because... I mean, anyone who listens to the podcast knows just how important and special and brilliant Jenny is to us, and how very, very important a place in our hearts Sally Ann Matthews, who plays Jenny, has as well. So it was funny listening to that first character profile where we were just like, so there's Jenny's coming back. She's in the 80s. Didn't really watch much of it. Well, I didn't watch any of it back then. Seen a few clips. Seems quite good.
I think we're like, I think she's quite an important character, but
yeah,
I don't know who she is.
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously knew, she was a teenager during the 80s. She kind of came into it mid to late teens, didn't she? Obviously, the Alan Bradley getting hit by a tram story is one of Corrie's most iconic over the years, and we were just kind of going on that. We did because we recorded the previous character profile like a couple of episodes into her new stint, and I think she was one of these characters that kind of hooked us straight away. I said something along the lines of, it's one of these characters that when they come on the screen you're like, oh, this is good, I'm looking forward to seeing what she's getting up to. Yeah, but it's funny because she is a classic from the 80s character, but she's done so much more since then. It's because she's easily one of Corrie's most successful comebacks ever, isn't she? She could have been a character that was gone into obscurity, a little footnote in the Coronation Street history books.
A template for how to do it.
100%. I mean, if you think of big returns over the years, you got Jenny, you got Blanche. Obviously, she made a massive comeback. Yeah. And there's been a few others, but this is by far one of the most successful, and she's really, really fit in perfectly in this modern era of Coronation Street. So we're going to be today talking a bit about what we love about Jenny so much, going over some of her big stories, memories, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's really funny, like looking back on it, because I'm like, oh yeah,
What?
oh yeah, all the things that we were about to talk about.
Yeah. She's been a main character for sure. I mean, now being a Rover's landlady, and it's not the same as it was back in the day. Back when the Rovers was the beating heart of Coronation Street, and we didn't have the bistro and the speed dial, and I suppose we did have the cafe, didn't we? But it's still an up there position. It's still something for the old CV, isn't it? But so she's this really is a story of a girl done good.
Yeah,
and maybe kind of married into a little bit as well, but
yeah, a northern lass. Turning her hand to being a humble landlady of the most famous pub in the world.
Yeah. When she was in it before, she was back in her first couple of stints. She racked up 289 episodes. She's now sitting somewhere around 1,350. So by quite a wide margin, the majority of her time on Coronation Street has been in this stint. She's now the 49th most featured character ever in Coronation Street. Feels still kind of a bit low. Maybe, but
yeah, I know what you mean. But there's been so many. I mean, this is Coronation Street's been going for so long, and there've been so many classic characters over those years. I think.
And long-running characters.
And she's still in it, so I really, really hope that she can rise in the ranks, because she deserves to be really high.
She's for sure going to get into 48th position this year, because she's just snapping at the heels of Rosie Webster. So unless we see an unexpected return from her, Jenny will be going up. Yeah.
Yeah, but Rosie doesn't count because she's a baby.
I don't actually know whether Corrie PG count those as appearances or whether it's just one she's credited. But anyway, look, let's go back. Let's turn back the clocks. Remember what it was like when Jenny first came back. That her return was announced in October 2014.
How are people supposed to know unless there's like a woozy camera effect that they're going back in time? Or
they're just going to have to imagine it, yeah.
I think you should bang your head against the wall a few times to get the right effect here.
October 2014 was when we heard that Jenny was coming back, and it felt like a big deal back then. I mean, we've been doing the podcast 2 years, so we knew a bit about Coronation Street and the legacy of this character. But so we were just kind of curious to see what this was like, and it was only originally a temporary return. When Sally Ann Matthews came back into the programme, she spoke about the fact that it was a beginning and an end type story.
It had a plot.
There was no idea of the fact that she would be returning the following year and would be still going very strong in the show 10 years later.
It does feel like some characters just like, oh, I'm coming back, and there's a story, and then they sort of hang around for a bit longer after that, and then you're like, oh, are you done?
This was definitely let's just see what it's like having Jenny back. It was really interesting at the time because she spoke about the differences between old school and modern Corrie, and I always love that about the comeback stories. But a lot of the comebacks now are they were in it a few years ago.
I know, so this is like a proper classic comeback, because Sally Ann Matthews was in the show like is the 80s.
Yeah, when there was only a couple of episodes a week,
and they were still holding on to some of the proper traditional classic methods of producing the show that they've not got any time for.
Yeah, she spoke about the lack of rehearsals, the fact that they would used to do rehearsals, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they'd do the filming Thursday and Friday.
It's so bonkers to even imagine
it's
that
utterly
they
bonkers
actually
to
rehearse.
remember this.
They don't rehearse. I don't know if anyone is listening who's like a new listener to us and hasn't heard quite a lot of our other stuff, but Coronation Street, they used to rehearse. They do not anymore. You're expected to turn up. You got your lines. You might run through it.
They give things a few takes and have a quick run through, but that's it.
They have a chat. Like it's not like it's not allowed to talk to each other, and there's collaboration between everybody. But it's like you're there. You do your lines. You read them through. You read them through again. You read them through again, and then there's the next scene.
So it was this story in 2015 that made us lifelong Jenny fans. I was just captured straight away by this character who's seen so much fun. She was smart. She was a bit kind of devious as well. She had a bit of a naughty side, but she just exuded. I had to describe
Sass,
it.
feistiness.
Yeah. It's 100% what Coronation Street needed.
She really, I mean, she still is, but this was a very strong, entry to the show, re-entry to the show.
And she came in as a blind date of Kevin. So he was sad and single back in early 2015, and he turns up for an internet date, and there she is. Now, he had known her back in the day. She'd been dating Martin Platt for a little bit, one of Kevin's compadres back in the late 80s, but it was still we haven't seen you for a jolly long time, let's give it a go. And the big drama at the beginning of it was, what's Rita going to think? Because the last time that Jenny had been on the show back in 93, she tried to get a load of cash off of Rita's never-ending Wonga fund
of gold.
Yeah, so that she could set up a salon or something like that. And Rita was like, "You're just trying to scam a load of money off me. Take £1,000 and bugger off. I don't want to see you again." So when Jenny came back into the show, it was like, "What's Rita what's she gonna say now?" And she wasn't there straight away. She was visiting Mavis in Cartmel. But when she came back, I remember the scene where Jenny was in the Rovers and Rita walks in, and Jenny has to have this awkward, "Hi, you remember me?" Because Rita had been, and still is, like a mother figure to Jenny, wasn't she?
Yeah, because Rita was, she was a foster mum. So that was back in the day, and they still got this kind of nice relationship that continues on throughout what we're going to talk about now, even right up to recent.
Yeah, and there aren't so many kind of grown-up, adult, parental relationships left on the show, are there? I mean, you got like Tracy and Ken, for example, but most of the mother-child relationships at the moment, you got a much younger.
Mum's dead.
Yeah, quite often people are dead, to be fair. So it's really brilliant that Jenny has been this link to the past. Rita as a character who's come right back from the mid-60s. But it almost didn't work out that way, because Rita was not happy to see Jenny again, and Jenny swore she's changed, and she's like, "I want to just make things up with you. Have £300 out of the £1,000." To be honest, if she's been gone 22 years, you'd have thought she might have been able to save up a little bit more than £300.
Well, also the interest rates.
Yeah, quite. Maybe that's why Rita was so miffed about it.
It's like, I'm sorry, I expected a return of £5%.
Yeah, £1,000 was a lot of money back then, actually. Yes, but anyway, Rita eventually forgives her, because Jenny makes it clear that she's staying around here. She's really into Kevin. They start dating, and Rita it makes it a lot easier that Rita softens to her. So Jenny's going out with Kevin for a bit, and what you get to see built up beautifully is the relationship between Jenny and little Jack. And then Jack was, in his previous form back then. Well, he was not Kieran Bowes back then. He was a little babby. How old? He was 5, I guess, 5, 6 at the time. And Jenny had this lovely, lovely relationship with him, and we later discover over the course of those months just what tragedy has been going on while she's been off screen because of her son Tom, who we later learn died in a tragic paddling pool drowning incident in the backyard garden, and Jenny's almost seeing Jack as a kind of replacement for Tom, and she's going through this awful mental trauma that comes part and parcel with losing your child in such a horrific way. But
we didn't know any of this. We just knew that Jenny came back, and she was very attached to the child. Yeah, and she didn't have a child of her own, so you could only guess why she was obsessed with.
Yeah, you kind of pick up pieces of what she's been up to in the intervening 22 years, but not very much. You got like little clues. There was one moment where Jack choked on a shallot one time, and Jenny had a real...
It's a bit middle class for Weatherfield, isn't it?
I know. I don't know where she got a shallot from.
No.
Maybe it was just a small onion. I don't know. And you think, what's going on there then? And then as the months go on, she starts becoming even more protective of this kid, starts to claim to strangers that he's her son. A little bit Carmel Finnan in a way. And there was this one confrontation with Maria because Jack had a fallout with little Liam, and Jenny slapped Maria when Maria tried to confront her about it. And that got scathing criticism of Jenny. I remember everyone was like, "Oh, who on earth is this cow coming in and slapping our Maria?" And by this point I was a diehard Jenny fan. I was like, oh no, well, everyone hates her, this isn't supposed to be how it goes, can't you see that she's brilliant? And Sally Ann Matthews has spoken to me a few times over the years about because whenever there's a character that I really like, I just want to see the good in them, and I want to see that they always make the right choices, and they're always very moralistic, you know. And Sal's spoken to me and said, look, that's boring. If a character never does anything wrong, or never makes any mistakes, or never has any kind of questionable moments of, you know, moral judgment or whatever, it's dull. And I think that's what I've kind of clung on to, because I think Jenny has matured over the years.
Just making her interesting. It's not her fault.
She has matured over the years, but she was never, you know, sweetness, light, perfect in any sense of the word back in the 80s or 90s. So why she should be now, I don't know.
This is interesting because at the moment, I think a lot of people are quite surprised at the turn it's taken with Jenny and Daisy with the baby stuff, and Jenny kind of being a bit cutthroat actually, and kind of looking out for herself above everyone else. And it's not outside of her character.
It's not outside of character. I still don't love it. I always have to whenever still Jenny does anything that's like, oh, don't do that. That's a bit naughty, isn't it? I always have to teach myself. I always have to have a word with myself and go, no, it could be in character. She's not been an angel in the past.
You don't like Goody Two Shoes, do you?
I do.
It is boring.
I know. But she has matured over the years, so sometimes it's still a bit of a shame when she does some questionable things. But yeah, so she's having a barney with Maria, but really the big fallout is with Sophie, who throughout all this time, Sophie, Kevin's daughter, has got a real kind of suspicious eye on Jenny and thinks there's something not right here.
Yeah.
Is she going after my dad for the wrong reasons? Is she up to something? Why is she being so close to Jack?
Catch.
Yeah, and actually she's right, because Jenny is having a bit of an episode, isn't she? And she's plotting, I suppose is the right word, to abscond to Hull with Jack.
Where else would you go?
Exactly, it's paradise. But she's rumbled by Maddie, Sophie's girlfriend at the time, who leaves Sophie a message on her answer phone. We all remember how this ended up. Boom, Maddie's dead. But and Jenny gets opportunity. I think it might have been during Maddie's funeral actually, to do a runner to Hull with Jack, dangle him over the balcony, and it's like, whoa, something's going on here. And this is when it all comes out about the trauma that she's been suffering. I think it was like 2 years previously when Tom had died, so it was still, you know, relatively
raw,
recent and raw for her, and that performance that Sal gives when she's up on the balcony is still up there with one of her best that she's given on Coronation Street. She threw all that she had at that role, and she absolutely kind of broke my heart, and it was performances like that made me a lifelong Jenny fan. She's eventually talked down by, I think it's Rita and Kevin, and then she's sectioned, and that's the last we see of her. But it was
this was also the wig.
Yeah, God, Jenny's wig. Jenny, tell us about Jenny's wig.
She had
Gemma.
a wig on. I don't remember why. She was on the phone and she had a special wig.
She was when she was trying to escape to Hull. She had a different persona.
Didn't
she? Which was a wig, so that she could hopefully get out of the the city without anybody recognise it. She does have some of the most recognisable locks that have ever graced Coronation Street.
Award-winning hair.
Well, this is another thing from the previous character profile. I'd said, we could have another contender for the Flame and Nora Award on the Conversation Street Awards this year. Little did I know that she would basically sweep the board for forevermore, and we ended up having to retire the award because it was just the Jenny Connor Award or Jenny Bradley Award every year. So yeah, that was the beginning of Jenny. But yeah, Jenny's wig was just utterly iconic and bonkers. It was a bit. It seems like it's been forgotten a little bit now, but that wig was what ended up putting us in touch with Sally Ann Matthews, isn't it? Because this was the first time ever, and we've been doing the podcast 3 years at this point, I think. This is the first time ever that we got any kind of recognition that a cast member had listened to the podcast. I remember this.
Yeah.
I found the tweet.
We had no expectation whatsoever.
Not at all. No, not at all.
Let alone somebody who worked on the show.
Let alone somebody who worked on the show and played the character that we utterly adore.
Yeah,
so June the 5th, 2015, I found the tweet. Sal sent a tweet saying, I love the idea that Jenny has a telephone wig. Because you'd said in the episode, some people put on a telephone voice and Jenny puts on a telephone wig, which was utterly bonkers. And it was like, oh my gosh, she listens to it. And then it just kind of spiraled from there, really, didn't it? That August, we had Sal on the podcast for our first ever interview, first ever cast interview, episode 162.
Really
and then that actually came a few days after the announcement that she was coming back to the show in 2016. So we were all mega hyped up to hear this. But yeah, we kind of started exchanging messages, and it was just,
she's lovely.
It's absolutely lovely, and she, ever since then, she's been so mega supportive of the podcast. I don't know whether, I don't think she listens to it these days, unless there's something a bit special. Maybe it's a little bit long for her. I don't know.
Well, it's too long for everybody.
No, some bits do always say that people like it. But yeah, she's just been an utter treasure to have, and she's the one that's put us, in contact with some of the other big names at Coronation Street. I know that she would, recommend the podcast to other actors.
She's been honestly, I don't think that a lot of what we've been able to do, we wouldn't have been able to do it without Sally Matthews, and eternally grateful to her for all of her support and help. Yeah, she's been wonderful, and it's so convenient that we love Jenny so much, and she's we think she's a fantastic actress and performer, because it'd be awkward if we didn't think that, wouldn't it? She's helped us. So proud of everything that she's been achieving on the show and stuff, and she's always so professional, so wonderful. Performances are fantastic, and it is just so lovely to see her now behind the bar at the Rovers. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's so much that we know about the behind the scenes workings of Coronation Street. Thanks for her explaining things to us. How do you, how does it, you get your script, how do you get your script? Like, what do you do then? How does that work? And there's very simple kind of mechanics of how things work. Not like, just that kind of, production side.
She's also our legal advisor from time to time, isn't she?
I don't know.
Because she's got a family of lawyers, and when she does listen to things that we record, and there's legal matters that we're still not very well versed.
I know what you mean. I thought you were saying like she advises us on we were sued
when we tried to comment on things that happen legally on Coronation Street. She'll often get in touch with us and say, no, this isn't how it works.
You don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, honestly, utterly grateful.
She does very patiently try to explain, but it doesn't always go in to our little ears, does it?
So how would you say were your overall impressions and memories of that particular first era of Jenny on Coronation Street?
Just bonkers, camp, wonderful, brilliant, dramatic, everything you want out of a soap. That story had it all, didn't it? Like a mystery, a secret death, a plot, a kidnapping. It feels like this is the sort of thing that happens like in every episode now in Coronation Street. It's kind of got a bit old, but this was really, really amazing storylining, and big massive characters too, because you had Kevin involved in it, and Rita, and we still got some mysteries, don't we? Because we don't know about Mr. Midgley, the father.
It's
very strange
nuts to me that Jenny's first husband, he didn't even have a name, didn't even have a first name, is still a complete unknown. I think we found out later that he ended up going off with another woman, and I think he's got a child with her. But I've just been waiting for him to show up one day. Eventually we got Daisy, who didn't even exist in canon back then.
This is Daisy's dad,
Yeah.
And we've had Christina, who's Daisy's mum, who also, I think that Jenny stole Mr. Midgley off of her.
I think that's
There's
right.
There's a lot of animosity there, and it was really fascinating. I would love to get Mr. Midgley on the show to see what he's like, and
it could happen. They will sometimes bring back characters who have been mentioned. They've given Jenny a
few love interests in the past. I don't know why she couldn't rekindle a romance with him.
Well, it doesn't even have to be a romance. It could be very much antagonistic.
Of course.
It would be nice. I think that's something that Jenny really, really is missing at the moment. The love of a good man. And I don't think it would be unfair to say that since Johnny left us, the character hasn't been quite as central and prominent in the show.
Which is annoying, because she should be.
100% should be. And I'd love I want her to be happy, and I think that as as a duo, her and Johnny, who we'll get onto a little bit, were one of Corrie's best couples, weren't they? They were a proper power couple for a couple of years. It really didn't last very long at all, but I adored them together. So, if they need to, bring back Mr. Midgley and rekindle something there, I don't know. And I still want to know more about Tom. And
I think we've heard everything we need to know.
I think we have as well, but I'm still, ever since Daisy came back,
I was obsessed
with the idea that Daisy is unintentionally behind the death of her younger brother.
Hiding from people.
Either hiding or doesn't realise, or it could be something that she's hiding from herself, as like this trauma that she's buried.
It's like a movie.
I know. But whether or not we're ever going to find anything about that, I just don't know.
She's done so much more than this.
She has, but yeah, what a fab start to the character. And I remember being so utterly thrilled when, a couple of months after she was carted off to the loony bin.
No, you can't say that.
We found out that the character would be coming back the following year. And 2016 was all about this return to the street, becoming an underworld cleaner, or cleaner at Underworld, and the beginnings of the romance with Johnny Connor. I can't remember whether he was part of the show back in her initial stint or not, or whether he'd come in a bit since then. But do you want to kind of run down what the stories with Jenny were in 2016?
6 months later, she's back in touch with Rita, and Rita discovers that she's living in this squalid bedsit. So Rita brings her back into the street, and Kevin allows her to sort of live with him for a bit, as long as she promises not to kidnap children anymore. Specifically, Jack.
There was... And we don't see hide nor hair of this anymore, but throughout 2016 or the beginning of it, I remember there being Jenny's... She still had a connection to Jack, didn't she?
Yeah.
Now, when maybe we brushed over
care
it.
About now.
Maybe we brushed over it a little bit earlier, but the whole idea between this Jack kidnap was to try and replace Tom in her life, because she was having a severe mental crisis.
She saw Tom in him, and I think he was the same age that Tom would have been.
Yeah, and so I think she like celebrated Tom's birthday with Jack or something like that. She did. So, but I loved that they still kept that relationship there, and it's gone. It's completely gone now. I mean, it's going to be a few years before Jack's old enough to get his first pint in the Rovers, but she
won't be pulling it for him.
She should know.
Because he beat her at Call of Duty too much. She's not having it. Right, so she's like the sort of initial period of time that she was on the street. She had to work really hard to get anybody to like her or trust her.
Well, yeah,
because she'd been a kidnapper, and so everybody is a bit gossipy and pulling ranks on her. And
especially
Sally doesn't like her either, which is really fast. It's you can't really think of Jenny as being an underdog, or like being having a lowly status on the street, but she really was. She was the bottom of the pack.
Yeah, and again, the fact that she's gone from that to where she is now is a testament to the resilience of the character, isn't it? But yeah, Sally, who did also know her in the 80s as well, I believe. Yeah, I think she did. Also, very much enjoyed.
Putting her in her place.
Yeah, because I think this was Sally's time when she was standing for councillor, or even might have been mayor at this time, I can't remember. And there was a bit of antagonism between the two of them. And Sally's just thinking, well, look how much better I've done than you.
Yeah, so everyone's horrible to her, and then one day Jack wanders into the factory, and everyone assumes that she's kidnapped him again, including Kevin, and she's like, I'm just going to move on then, because this is too much for me. But Kevin persuades her to stay.
Yeah, so she's been employed. I think, was it Kevin that helped her to get the job at the factory? I can't remember, but
nobody trusts her.
Somebody threw her. No, somebody threw her a bone, but the rest of the factory girls were just like, no, she's
no,
she's a nutcase.
Sally decides she wants to go to Blackpool for the day, and Jenny's like, I know, I'm going to go there too, because that's where my father died. I'm going to lay his ghost to rest. I'm going to visit the place he was hit by a tram. I'll just find it with where the blue plaque is. That'll be easy enough. And while she's there, she saves Jack from the path of a tram. And it kind of like, she exorcises the ghost. She earns the respect of Sally, and she sort of what's the word, rights all the wrongs, doesn't she, in one
Yeah,
easy
and the fact
jump.
that it was the tram, and that obviously mirrored what happened with her own
Yeah,
dad. Was
it's kind of like closure for her on that
Sure.
kind of chapter of her life.
Well, I remember when Sally said that she was going to Blackpool, and she had like a picture of it on a sewing machine or something in the factory, and Jenny had a bit of a wobble to do with that, because she hadn't found closure yet in what happened to her dad, and she'd never been to Blackpool since he'd been hit by a tram in 1989.
I mean, a lot of people are the same.
Well, yeah. It was Johnny who came along, and I don't think at this stage there was particularly a spark of romance between them.
No, they were there together, weren't they? She starts falling for him after this.
Yeah, and he was just came along at the right time, and he'd shown her kindness by giving her a job in the factory when nobody else had. And I think you can, say, did she need a father figure in her life? Because obviously he was that much older than her, not father age older.
Come on.
Her. But he was a dependable
man.
Well off. He had his life sorted, and that's kind of what Jenny needed, because she'd been going through her life flitting from place to place and just trying to survive, and probably making a lot of enemies along the way. And here was Johnny as a kind of shelter for her. And it's no surprise that they ended up getting close. And I love the Blackpool scenes. I remember when they're standing opposite the Strand Hotel, and the wind's all blowing all over her face while she's trying to eat an ice cream. And it was just a really lovely, tender sort of moment that called back to an iconic Coronation Street scene. So it was, absolutely lovely. And it was good that trip did end up getting Jenny on Sally's side as well.
So Jenny, like I said, falls for Johnny, and Kate's advising her on what to do, like play hard to get and ask him for sewing lessons after hours. And
this is Kate, Johnny's daughter, isn't it?
She also makes herself useful because Carla and Nick get married, and Johnny wants her to guard Tracy during the ceremony because Tracy wants to jump out and stop them from getting married. It doesn't actually go to plan because she escapes. I do remember that quite vividly.
I think Tracy, this is one of my most memorable Jenny scenes.
I need my medicine.
Jenny's there playing something on the radio, isn't she? And she gives just this look. I remember her kind of turning back to the stock room, and she's like, "Quiet in there, I got work to do," or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely perfect.
It was funny. It was these two bitches like head to head, wasn't it?
Yeah. That honestly was one of the defining Jenny moments of the early years to me. It's brilliant.
So it gets hot between Jenny and Johnny, but and they kiss, but he sort of wants to cool it down. So she goes out with somebody, a client at Underworld, to make him jealous, and it does work. And so they agree to give things another go, but they're going to keep it a secret. To keep it on the down low, so that Jenny can be his spy in the factory. And it works quite soon because the Underworld staff are supposed to be working on August bank holiday, but instead they decide to watch a film, and so she dobs them in, and Johnny catches them in the act and ducks their pay, and they all go on strike.
This was another. I get. Does this fit with Jenny's personality? She was trying to obviously stay in a potential boyfriend's good books here, and these guys had been treating her, or these girls had been treating her really quite with a lot of disdain, and she was in their eyes just the lowly cleaner. But that was another moment where I was like, "Oh, Jenny, don't do that."
Well,
but I think it fits.
They were being naughty, weren't they?
Yeah.
So Aidan tempts them back with cakes, but when they come back, they walk in on Jenny and Johnny having a snog. And Aidan and Kate, for some reason Kate turns on Jenny, and they both get worried that she's a gold digger because old Papa Johnny is worth quite a lot of money, and they're concerned that they're gonna, have a bit of a cut in the old inheritance. He's not having any of it. He takes her to a trade fair, then they go to France together, and
it's just all looking good at the end of the year.
And at the end of the year, he asks her to move in with her.
Do you think there was any element of gold digging? I think that this is probably a discussion we had back in the day.
Well, this kind of annoys me because it's always women that get accused of it, and it's always women who it gets easier all the time, but it's not easy for women to become as rich and successful as men because of biology, because of raising children, because of status, because of opportunities, because of not being taken so seriously. And then, so when a woman marries a man who's got more money than her, which is almost everyone, is she a gold digger, or is she actually somebody who's going to be doing all the hard work behind the scenes, getting stuff, sorting things out, so that he can carry on being a successful businessman?
I think that the money that came with the relationship was a happy bonus.
No, you got to be bonkers to not be like, this is nice. I like having money.
I didn't get any kind of feeling that she wasn't into him. He gave her exactly what she needed at a time when she was at rock bottom, really.
And, Johnny was a hard worker, and he was a sort of hard-nosed business guy, but she offered him love and support. And
yeah, because he'd been single for a long time since the death of his wife.
He had 2 kids, but that didn't, that's not the same as having a partner.
Yeah, so I think...
And honestly, if you're going to call anyone a gold digger, I think Kate was more than anybody. Aidan worked hard, and he had a sad life, but Kate is a total leech. She got a job because of Daddy's money. She didn't do bugger all. She buggered off to Thailand to do whatever the hell. Spent all her time moaning about Jenny taking her inheritance. What did she actually do? Nothing. She's lazy.
It was not a relationship that I would have ever put any money on working. And I can't remember back at the time now, what did I think when I heard it was going this way? But I probably would have thought that sounds a bit odd, because there is the age difference, and that these characters don't seem to move in the same circles at all.
I don't really.
It was about 10 years or so.
I really don't. I don't think 10 in Coronation Street. I don't think 10 years means anything.
Not anymore. But once they got together, I 100% invested in this. I completely bought it. It was just gutting when it all had to come to an end a few years later.
Yeah, you were a real champion of Jenny and Johnny, and that was one of the reasons why you really did not like Daisy when she first appeared.
Yeah, because she was so against him, and it was a shame how things went sour between them in the end, and you can blame one, blame the other. We'll find out a bit more about that in a minute, but this was just a lovely tale of romance. And yes, they got up to romps in the stock cupboard, but I still saw it as a proper, it's like a young girl meeting a prince kind of story, wasn't it? It was so heartwarming and lovely. The pauper to princess kind of story of Jenny, well, Bradley still at the time.
Don't they say if you marry for money, you earn every penny?
Yeah,
because I really think that's true.
Yeah, I think that this story also did an awful lot of good for getting the viewers on Jenny's side as well. I think by the time that she left in 2015, people were like, oh, this is something pretty special here, and there was quite a lot to celebrate when she was brought back in. But seeing her go from this rags to riches kind of tale, I think, the viewers, she gained a lot of fans through it, and everyone was
she's just so charismatic and fun to watch.
Yeah.
And she's one of these actors, a bit like Maureen Lipman, where their facial expressions do a lot of work, and you don't even have to give them a script. They can be hilarious, but also very dramatic, and they wear their emotions on their face. And I think that Jenny particularly is really good at that. That's just why I want more Jenny in the show. I can't believe we've had so little of her recently.
We spoke a bit about Rita earlier, and this was, I enjoyed how it was Rita who rescued her from a bedsit, and I think there was some scenes filmed at Chimney Pot Park with them just sitting on the bench together. And do you think that they've made taken good enough advantage of this mother-daughter bond over the years? Are we seeing enough of it? Would we like to see more?
I'd like to see more, but I don't think that Barbara Knox is filming very many episodes in general. I mean, imagine.
Even last year when Sal was doing on her Instagram Live, she said about, Barbara would still like to do more scenes, but she'd rather they were lower key scenes with characters like Jenny or Brian or Mary.
Well, it's funny because Jenny, for all that Rita's been in the show for bloody, how long?
Well,
centuries.
Yeah, at least.
She's not actually got that many really strong relationships on the street apart from Jenny. Like, even Gemma, who she took in with the brain tumour stuff and all that, she's not even, you know, that close to her anymore.
Yeah, well, Gemma kind of, she was another one who entered into this little family unit at the end of 2016.
And Jenny kind of rivalry, wasn't there?
It started off as a rivalry, but they ended up being almost kind of like sister-ish together.
They did. And it was sweet. They got rid of that and they kind of lost all that.
Yeah, this was...
Mind you, if I was Jenny, I'd be well shot of all that nonsense.
This was Gemma kind of moving on from her gangster's mole persona that she'd come into the street with, and she was trying to get the Weatherfield Good Samaritan Award because she heard that Peter Andre would be the one handing out the trophy at the end, and she's like helping Rita across the street. Rita ends up taking her in, and yeah, Jenny's definitely wound up by this somewhat.
Gold digger.
But I really have enjoyed the Gemma-Jenny relationship over the years. I would like to see more of Rita, but I totally get why it can't happen very much. And one of my favourite, if not the favourite, Jenny and Rita moment that we had over the years was at the end of the 10,000th episode, where Rita's there alone in the pub, you remember, and she's looking at all the photos and the voices are echoing, and she's has a sit down and has a bit of a cry, and Jenny comes in, and I can't remember what Rita says. It was like, "Oh, you're so important to me, I love you so much," or something along those lines. It was just absolutely wonderful, and the sort of long, you know, this goes 40 years back, this Jenny and Rita relationship, and you can't put a price on that, and that's what's so brilliant about soap. And anything that we ever get that's those two together is just that little nod to the past.
It's a nice treat.
Us Corrie fans enjoy, yeah, for sure. I think, going back to what we were saying about the Blackpool scenes, I don't think that was the last time that Corrie had been to Blackpool.
Has been to Blackpool.
But I think it was one of the last, because I'm sure that the Jude Appleton exit scenes are in Blackpool since then.
They should do more stuff.
This feels like this was the last big trip to Blackpool. They almost got there on the 10,000th episode, but things got in the way.
I do like them doing location stuff. I do think it's really important, because one of the things that Coronation Street prides itself on is, you know, its northern roots and talking about northern life, but you just see sets that are all fake. I'd really like to see them film in Manchester more, film in, you know, the greater area. And
in the early 2010s, there had been a flurry of scenes at Blackpool. Obviously, Roy and Hayley had visited there a couple of times. There was one where little Simon went there with his granddad and grandma and then ran away. And it felt that we were in a new kind of era of, they can just pop up to Blackpool. And it's just gone since. And it feels very, very traditional Corrie. I mean, Coronation Street itself visited Blackpool within its first year or so on air.
Well, it's one of the places you would go. It's you know.
Yeah, it's a popular holiday destination for people up there.
They've got their waxworks in the Waxwork Museum.
Yeah, now that's what I want to see. I want to see the Coronation Street characters going to Madame Tussauds and going, "Oh my God, it's Deirdre."
I don't understand.
This is where she spent all that time. Yeah, I'd love it, but it was really a good idea, I think, to make reference to that iconic Alan Bradley scene. And then, you know, these days, people being killed in dramatic ways are 10 a penny, aren't they?
Yeah.
But this was one of Corrie's, at the time, most iconic, most memorable deaths. And so to have this scene where they go back there and they kind of pay homage to it, it was just brilliant, and Sal was amazing in it. She came back onto the podcast when they went to Blackpool. I think it was
lucky how many times
twice in 12 months we had Sal.
I'd have her on every day if she wanted.
That was episode 200 of the podcast. That was quite a special one. We did lots of listener questions and things that time. And then it was also midway through the summer, so a couple of months after that was when we went to Manchester and we met up with her for the first time. And that was the first time that we'd had a proper encounter, planned encounter, should I say, with one of the cast members. And I think that might have been the summer that we met Adam Blease as well, who plays Dirk. I think that was the same trip. It's just, I remember Sal coming to the gates and we were like, oh my gosh, it's Jenny Bradley off Coronation Street.
Adam Blease needs a shout out too, because he was the first person we ever spoke to who worked on the show.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And he was so nice to chat with us.
Well, he's a proper pal of Sally Ann Matthews as well, isn't he?
He's great. He really is great.
Yeah. 2017 then, which was a bit of a classic.
Plays
Dirk.
Dirk.
Dirk. Thank you. 2017 for me was one of Corrie's, was the best of the modern era of Coronation Street. A lot of it was because of what was going on with Phelan and the Who Pushed Ken storyline.
There was a lot of great stuff.
There was a lot of good stuff in that, the Bethany's grooming. But for Jenny and Johnny, the story was all about him getting his MS diagnosis and preparations for their wedding. So they start off the year, do Jenny and Johnny, with a bit of a fallout over a misunderstanding. Now, this is a storyline that was running throughout the whole year. Aidan had been having an affair with Maria, but Jenny overhears him talking about having an affair, and she thinks that it's Alia that he's having it off with. So she kind of puts the cat among the pigeons there and wrongfully accuses him, which is just a little bit wrong because it's the wrong person. Because he's dating Eva at the time, Eva Price, of course. And then this ends up with more of Aidan accusing Jenny of being a gold digger. And yeah, they have a massive fallout, do Johnny and Jenny. He's fuming. He tells Jenny to leave, but Gemma is the one to bring them back together. And before long, Johnny has proposed. Hurrah, how lovely. So Jenny and Sally, in a little side story for the years, shall we say, team up at Underworld to design a mastectomy bra. That attracts the attention of Richard Drake, a retailer. This was an odd little story because he's going to buy a load of these bras off of Underworld, off of Sally and Jenny, and then he cancels the order after getting cold feet. And then Jenny really is a bit minxy and a bit cold and she I remember completely. There was a scene at his factory where I think she's like sitting on his desk looking kind of quite smugly down on him because she's discovered that he's been having an affair with a PA, and she basically blackmails him into reinstating and doubling the order of bras. And yeah, another 100% example of showing that Jenny can be a little bit mischievous sometimes.
Not mischievous, it's for the greater good, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, wedding preparations continue throughout the year. Jenny proves quite the demanding fiancé. There are accusations of bridezilla thrown against. She did.
She had a little rook's nest upstairs with all of her pictures of all the brides and stuff, pictures, and everyone was getting mad and thought she had ideas above her station. I genuinely cannot get upset with any woman who gets excited about getting married. Just why are people so horrible?
Yeah, obviously
it's just a fun thing that people are happy about. Just let them be happy.
It wasn't a good look when she had been accused of being a gold digger beforehand, but absolutely,
weddings are
I don't
expensive.
deny her.
You cannot get away with
that. Yeah.
They get you at every moment.
I think there were some times, you saw hints that she was a bit looking down on the others in the factory and saying, well, yeah, I'm marrying the boss. But you kind of would, wouldn't you? Especially when they had made your life such a misery when you were hired.
And now you're like, well, guess what, everyone?
So while all this is going on, Kate Connor is getting worried about her dad's health. And he gets diagnosed with MS.
Decides not to tell her.
Why would you tell your significant other about a medical condition on Coronation Street? It's just not the done thing.
Or anyone.
Much better for them to discover it in a dramatic revelation.
Don't tell your sister you got cancer. Wait for her to find your body.
Anyway, he's like, I've got MS. I don't want to burden Jenny with this. Calls off the wedding, and Kate says, "Well, that's a bit harsh, actually, Dad." But then when he asks Jenny back, she turns him down. So the wedding's off for a little bit, but then she later discovers about his diagnosis, realises what this was all about. They get back together, even though she knows that this condition could mean quite difficult times ahead. Obviously, Jenny, a little bit fresh to the street, still didn't realise that once you get diagnosed with something on Coronation Street, if it's not life limiting, then it just get forgotten about.
Yeah.
And Johnny's MS did crop up occasionally in very convenient and dramatic moments later on over the next couple of years, but yeah, it wasn't too bad at the end, although it makes you wonder, had he still remained with us in 2025, how much would the condition have progressed by this point. So maybe you went out. Know. Maybe you went out on top. I don't know. So anyway, they're getting back together again. They set a date of September for the wedding, and this is a double wedding with Aidan and Eva, who he's still going out with. Well, he's
planning to marry her.
Going to marry her, but
he does not
he's
know.
Still going out with
that
Maria.
She knows about this affair with Maria.
Yeah, Eva by this point has found out that he's been having it off with Maria, and she sets up this amazing revenge plan.
She's got no intention of marrying him at all.
No, but that's another story. Combining with the drama of the wedding is a side story where Rita gets a brain tumour, little bit of cancer.
Hope she'll be alright.
She's fine. This is like 8 years later, isn't it? I thought tumours were all a bit cancerous. It's not good anyway. It's not good. Rita starts getting memory loss. They take her into hospital, and she is diagnosed with a brain tumour. And it basically leads to Jenny and Johnny getting married in Rita's hospital room, which was literally one of my favourite Coronation Street weddings ever. And I think it is partly to do with the fact that it was this couple who I was so rooting for. But the whole wedding was brilliant, wasn't it?
Well, it started off in this grand mansion.
Yeah.
And with a fountain outside and beautiful grounds and luxurious suites. But it all falls to pieces because of the drama with Aidan, Maria and Eva, and then Jenny and Johnny arrive on a bicycle on
back of a motorbikes
with some Hells Angels
in the middle of the fight in the fountain between Eva and Maria.
Sod this, let's just go. And it does prove, Jenny had all these dreams and she wanted the perfect day, but at the end of it, she just really wanted to marry Johnny. And so all the stuff about her being a gold digger was really unfair, because she wouldn't have married him knowing that he had MS, and she wouldn't have been happy to have had a simple ceremony in a hospital room.
No, because I think they start maybe going down the aisle in the hotel, but she realises that she can't do this without Rita, and so they all turn up at the hospital. It was lovely.
It really was.
I love kind of Jenny's excitement as well during that wedding scene. Like,
they're
having to do it quickly because they aren't really supposed to be doing it there, and Billy's kind of rushing through the bells, and Jenny's like, I do. Yeah. It was brilliant. It was so joyous and lovely and wonderful and happy.
It was.
Absolutely.
It was probably one of the nicest weddings.
Yeah, totally. And then
the whole thing was just amazing. It was a proper spectacle.
Yeah.
In every sense of the word.
Well, it ended with a bit of a twist as well, didn't it? Because you had Johnny carrying Jenny over the threshold of the factory at the end of the episode. They look up and the roof is gone. And we didn't see this coming. This was all part of Eva's plan of taking revenge on Aidan and, by extension, the rest of the Connor clan. It was such a top episode. That absolutely brilliant.
It was really good.
But it did mark the end, for a bit at least, of Johnny in the underworld, because there was no underworld left for a spell.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a bit of like when they shut the roads down for a bit. It's like, okay, the drama was good, but now.
Yeah, I know.
What are we going to do?
So from this point onwards, Jenny has been known as Jenny Connor, and I remember us having, quite intense discussions at the time with like, but she's Jenny Bradley, isn't she? She's Jenny Flamin Bradley. I'll never be able to accept her as Jenny Connor.
Well, it's like when Sarah came back and we insisted we would always call her Sarah Louise, and
But you do get some characters who, in the wider media, are still referred to and remembered as an original surname, aren't they? Like, I saw something, and Jenny does still get that. I saw an article from the past year about Jenny, and it still says Jenny Bradley. Yeah. Because she's Jenny Bradley. And in Sally, she's Sally Webster. I think she may be shaken the Webster moniker a little bit, hasn't she? Just because this long-term marriage with Tim has been so successful. Deirdre was Deirdre Barlow, whoever she was married to. I think even Rita. I think she's often Rita Sullivan to lots of people. But yeah, it's funny that
it's very political to get into women's surnames.
Oh, I know, and I think then you get into characters like Yasmin, who is still Yasmin Metcalf, which really doesn't make sense to me at all. Why she would want to keep the surname of this abuser.
Hang on.
I wonder.
I've got a friend who has been married and now divorced, and I sent her a Christmas card with her old surname on it.
Oh, did you?
And she was like, "Oh no, I'm keeping the surname. I worked hard for that."
Weird.
I'm like, okay, but that's not how I view marriage, but I guess that's why you're divorced.
But Yasmin had a lot of history with that name, but I think it's nice, I suppose, that Jenny has kept the Connor in tribute to Johnny, even though by the end of their relationship they had gone through some very, very rocky times. But I can't deny that it would be quite cool if she decided to go back to Bradley. She's got no reason to, has she?
Well, it's a
she
pain
really
in the
doesn't.
Bum. Most women don't want to change it because they have children, or they can't, or it's just too much of a faff.
And I think, in the world of Weatherfield, the name Connor does have a bit of clout behind it, doesn't it?
Well, it's just as much her name as it is anyone else's. Same as my name is my name.
Oh, yeah. So
not. It really annoys me when people act like women's names are temporary or something.
Well, lots of people do still, but
I know, but she shouldn't.
I think that she Bradley. You remember Alan Bradley, Connor. You think of icons like Carla Connor, Michelle Connor, Johnny Connor, and it's a name that has got a lot of.
It's a funny old one because the Connors really were quite a brief moment in time, and in a very specific moment in time, because they all came in with Johnny.
Yeah, well, no, it was
Michelle and Johnny and
Johnny
Paul
came a bit later. Johnny came a bit later.
Right,
it was Paul and Liam.
Paul and Liam came in
Ryan.
first, and then Carla married in, and then you had Johnny, but Johnny was really Carla's dad all along.
I don't consider Jenny to be part of that family tree at all, even though I think I do accept her as Jenny Connor. When I think Jenny Connor, I don't automatically think Carla Connor, Michelle Connor, Maria Connor. I don't. They're in the same family, but they don't really have much to do with each other, do they?
Yeah.
I don't think they are. I mean, they might exchange the odd Christmas card. So I think it feels to me like she's taken that name from them and she's made it her own at this point. The Connors to me, black hair, dressed in black, business minded, as in to do with the rag trade. And Jenny's not like that, but she's taken it and made it her own.
I mean, if you're going to be a bit mean about it, a Connor woman is somebody who marries into the family, takes all the money, and then runs a business separate.
Yeah, absolutely right.
That's literally what they've all Michelle, Maria,
Carla, they've all married into the.
They all get in, get the money, and get out.
Yeah.
And keep the name and the cash.
You're right, actually. You're absolutely right. That's quite funny. But Jenny deserves it. She's a landlady of the Rovers. 2018, Gemma, back to you. What's been going on
here?
The
marriage is on the rocks already.
Unbelievably. It was like less than a year after they got married. It's utterly tragic. I was so sad.
Yeah, I don't know why, but let me tell you.
We also, we had the good, the positives with this year was 2018 was when they bought the Rovers.
Yeah.
Because it was after Toya and Peter shipped out.
Well, Johnny's planning to retire to Spain at the beginning of the year, but he puts that to one side to try and help Aidan reopen the factory. And Jenny's starting to feel a bit of an outcast in the family. She's not really vibing with everybody, and she gets really jealous when Johnny and Liz start getting closer and he gets drunk with her and stuff. So she decides that she's going to force his hand about moving to Spain, takes the money out of the business account and puts it down as a deposit. But the plans for this trip immediately grind to a halt because of Aidan taking his own life, and Johnny having the trauma of finding him and dealing with the death and everything. And he gets really upset and he takes his grief out on everybody, including Jenny.
Yeah, this really was a big roadblock.
Yeah.
And and this kind of thing, when people do take their own lives or when there's a family tragedy, it doesn't often bring people together. On relationships, and sadly this is what happened with Johnny and Jenny, and Liz
sailed in, didn't she? They Johnny and Liz get closer. They end up having a snog. Johnny tries to ban Jenny from going to Aidan's funeral. Like, oh, you never liked him, why do you want to go? Then he feels guilty about the fact he kissed Liz and lets her go anyway. And then he's like, oh, I might as well shag Liz while I'm here.
Yeah.
Why
People
not?
cope with grief in different ways, and I still don't really forgive him for that. Liz was there as a comforting bosom for him, wasn't she? But
Okay.
Johnny is still the one to have put the boot into this relationship, and I really wish that hadn't happened.
Well, he has a breakdown, if that makes you feel any better.
No.
He kidnaps Susie, his granddaughter, and so Liz and Jenny have to track him down, and eventually Jenny and Johnny make back up again. And so Johnny buys the pub when Rita sells it. They hire
Rita
Gemma.
sells it.
I meant Peter. I'm always getting the two confused.
Yeah. Both raging alcoholics.
Both got grey hair. Gemma gets hired as a barmaid. Henry gets hired as a barman. And they start saying, oh, we're going to open a new look. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be Rose with a Z. And it's all going to be different. You won't recognise it. But when they actually do open it, it just looks the same, basically.
They made quite a big thing of that, even in the press. And I remember, was it This Morning went there and they were like, oh, tell us what it's going to be like.
And they were all like playing into it, weren't they?
Really, really were. And I think there was even like a picture on the Corrie Instagram or the social media of like a neon sign with the Rovers there. And it just turned out to be nothing. But this was amazing. I don't think at the time when Toyah and Peter were landlord and landlady, we were, as massively Toyah fans as we are now. But the news that Jenny, our literal favourite character and favourite person outside the show as well, had been chosen as being the next Rovers landlady.
That was so exciting.
She
so deserves moment. It too, and she really wish that she had more scenes that were properly about the Rovers, not just about her worrying that she's not going to be in charge of the Rovers anymore.
I mean, Coronation Street in the preceding 10 years had almost a revolving door of land people. I suppose Liz and Steve were in and out for a bit, weren't they? Toyah and Peter didn't last 6 months, it felt like.
We also had Liz and Michelle as well.
Yeah, and then before that you had the Prices, didn't you? You had Stella and Carl Monroe, and that was obviously a disaster. Toyah, as much as we love her, she was never suited as landlady material. But I remember that, the choice of Jenny, having this character who had been in the show for, with a bit of a 22-year break. She'd been in the show for 30-odd years at that point, and it felt like she'd really earned it. Toyah hadn't earned Rover's landlady position. Stella, who kind of swans in...
No, Stella definitely
100%
did not deserve
not.
It.
But,
Jenny's earned it. Jenny deserves it. Jenny also really belongs there. It feels like she is a really great landlady.
It was the destination of her journey from rags to riches, wasn't it? And I just remember being so utterly excited and thinking,
riches so much.
No, maybe not so much. What kind of landlady is she going to be? Is she going to have an iconic outfit? I think we probably had Sally Ann Matthews on the podcast again for an interview at that point to say, tell us.
I do remember Sal talking about Jenny's wardrobe and sort of saying it was very posh and kind of executive looking, and she really does wear great outfits, doesn't she? She's always got something quite smart.
As much as I think it'd be brilliant to see a lot more Jenny in the Rovers, she does feel at home there. I love her little throne that she has at the back of the till, and then Daisy's mini throne
with her
next
little
to it.
That is so cute. I just love that so much.
Yeah. She's just got the presence that a proper Rovers landlady needs.
And she's got that joie de vivre and that sarcasm too, and not suffering fools.
And she's a good people person.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is.
Just absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
So anyway, she takes over. She revamps, and they see through Henry's attempt to try to scan them. He throws himself down the cellar steps to try to sue them, and they no, we're not having it. Sling your it.
Yeah, that was great because obviously we loved Henry, but that was a proper and well deserved moment of triumph for Jenny and Johnny, slinging him out on his ear.
Now Jenny finds out that Johnny had slept with Liz because of Fakey.
Oh, fake Katie.
Yeah, fake Katie / Hannah, the Australian fake woman.
If you don't know their story, I wouldn't bother looking it up. Basically, Jenny finds out that Johnny's been a bit of a naughty boy.
She forgives him, but she's suspicious from then on, and she also is not going to forgive Liz. She breaks Liz's phone and gives her a replacement with a trollop tracker on it, and she sees the two of them together at points, and she gets really resentful and jealous. She signs Liz up on an escort site. That doesn't really work. A lot of stuff didn't really work, so she just eventually just runs her over on Christmas Day.
That was a Christmas... Yeah, that was quite a shocker for Christmas Day 2018 when she took a bottle and then ran into her in the road and then...
Oops.
I think, doesn't Liz pick herself up and end up going back into her flat and then collapses down there, and Jenny has to hide the fact that she'd hit her.
Well, Johnny takes the blame for it and he gets arrested, but he says, "Oh, it's my MS. I got a dizzy."
Oh yeah, you're right, didn't they?
So
this was a kind of a return
really
to unhinged Gemma. Jenny.
I know it's difficult to
unhinged Gemma.
Separate me from mad behaviour on Coronation Street, but I haven't run anyone over in real life.
And her crying her heart out on the balcony back in summer of 2015 very much did echo her drunken hysterics, basically, that we got here.
Sexist.
And I think this was probably the beginning of Drunk Jenny, which is a bit of a fan favourite, isn't it?
Oh, I love Drunk Jenny. More Drunk Jenny.
I
don't think she could afford to get drunk anymore.
I've enjoyed it at times. I think sometimes I felt that they've revisited that well a little bit too often, and it's felt like, oh, let's just get... Because Sally Ann Matthews does great drunk acting. And yeah, sometimes I feel like it's like, oh, let's just throw that in for a bit of a laugh. Is it really needed? But it feels like we haven't seen too much of it recently. So maybe it's time for Drunk Jenny to come back again. I don't know. Do you think that... How did you feel about the end of Jenny and Johnny and the fact that they chose to split them up quite so early?
You were always a much bigger fan of them than I was. I like Jenny. I don't necessarily think that she and Johnny were like the be all and end all like you did. So it didn't really bother me that much because I liked Jenny by herself.
I liked how he made her happy and he offered her that stability that she needed at a real desperate time and in her life. And
but that's you talking like she's a real person.
Yeah, I know.
As a character, you want her to be unhinged and spiralling into despair and craziness and doing all kinds of weird antics.
I don't know. I like the idea of her settle down, to be honest, and it just felt like it was far, far, far too soon to have them split up.
It felt like they could have wrung more years from them as a couple, but you know, when an actor wants to go, they want to go.
Yeah, they were just great as a united couple in front of the behind the bar. And
but Johnny never looked like he was that bothered, though. This is what gets me about it. Is that Johnny was like, I like the idea of leaning against the bar and reading the paper, and it's my pub, and I get to drink beer at 11 o'clock in the morning.
I think Jenny was more excited than he was about
this
owning
was Jenny's
it.
thing.
This was her. It wasn't like her dream. She'd never aspired to be the Rover's landlady.
No, but
I think
she
once
wanted was power.
Yeah.
And she wanted to lord it over people, and she wanted everybody that she'd grown up with who didn't take her seriously and thought she was a flighty idiot, and all the people that thought she was just a lowly cleaner. She wanted to rub their noses in it.
I don't know whether it was necessary. Maybe with people like Sally, but I think it was, for me, it was more a case of proving to them, look, I am capable. Look what I have achieved. I told you I could do it, rather than ha, you're the other side of the bar and I'm the boss here.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can look at it whatever way you want. It's the same kind of thing, but one of them's a bit more evil.
Yeah, I didn't get...
You're the nicer person.
I am I'm very nice. Yeah, so nice. Yeah, but at least they were able to say, because I remember at the beginning of the year when they were talking about going to Spain, and I was seriously worried at the time that was definitely going to happen. Throughout the following years, there were threats that they would move to Spain or to France or what have you, and I was like, no, I can't take it. I can't. 2018 was also the year that Sally Ann Matthews did a little bit of a side gig with her short film. Do you remember the Live films.
Yes.
So this was
I do. The science fiction.
10-minute science fiction-y short
They were
films
cool.
directed by Dom Stevenson, who also sometimes does Corrie. But yeah, Sally Ann Matthews, it was in the first one, it was her and Brooke Vincent who played her daughter. Liv, yeah, and Liv was in a car crash, but it got really weird. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it. I think it is available on the internet to watch. I don't think it's YouTube, but I think it's on Vimeo or something. And then they did a sequel a few years later with Ryan Prescott and Rob Mallard.
Yeah, Rob Mallard was in it. He was evil. He was interviewing. He was like a nasty man.
It was really, really good. And there's
it was just fun also just seeing Corrie Stiles do something that wasn't Corrie.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't the same thing, but like when Jack P. Shepherd did that one, when Ben Price directed him, that short film.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is fun to see.
Even Georgia Taylor did a short film about domestic violence.
Yeah, and that was in between.
And
Corrie,
she was the one what done it.
I know, and Danson's done one, hasn't she, in the past few years?
What did she do?
It was
Did we watch that one?
Yeah, I think she was sitting in a restaurant or something. I
don't remember.
Yeah, we definitely seen it.
I do love short films. They are actually great.
But honestly, this series of 2 at the moment of the chapter films, I desperately want to know what happens next, because it was left on a cliffhanger. But I don't know whether that's going to happen.
And Adam Blease was in it.
He was, yeah.
Playing Dirk again. The eternal.
He had a line in one of them, didn't he? He had a line in one of them. Yeah, so 2018 was also the year that Sal was longlisted for an NTA award for serial drama performance. Didn't win it, but that didn't stop us from doing our very best.
Yeah, we made a video.
Made a video and everything. We were. I can't believe that all these years later, Sally Ann Matthews hasn't picked up an award for Jenny. I think she's accepted awards from Coronation Street before, when it's won Best Soap, maybe at the British Soap Awards or other ones. But it pains me to think that she still hasn't got an award. And she's the way that the character is at the moment. She doesn't have she's not headlining any stories. She hasn't for a while, has she? We're kind of settled into a situation now where she's the mum in the Daisy stories, or even in the Stephen story. It wasn't hers,
No, I know she needs to be the centre.
She
of
desperately
attention
needs to be in the centre of a story, and Sally Ann Matthews is by far one of the best actresses they've got on Corrie. So it's not like she wouldn't be able to cope with something like that.
There are so many great performers on that show, and so many massive stories that don't even get a look in for the awards. But Jenny has not had anything meaty for a while, which is like a crying shame.
She's won her fair share of Conversation Street awards, though.
I don't think
which are more important than the BAFTAs and the NTAs and the Inside Soaps put together, quite frankly.
I don't think she really is that as keen on them.
Why not? Because I would be.
I would want a BAFTA. But, we did give her an actual trophy.
We did actually give her a physical trophy.
The only person who's got a physical trophy from Conversation Street. Yeah. And the only other person who's had a certificate is Charlie D'Amello. He got a Dirty Dog Award.
He did. He got one of the Bobbins Awards, didn't he? But we digress. 2019, Gemma. What's she get up to then?
Well, she pleads with Liz to not prosecute Johnny. And then this is
about the running over,
and Liz realises that it was actually Jenny what done it in the end, and so Jenny hits the bottle, and Rita convinces Liz that she should have just not slept with Johnny, and so Liz relents, and she when the trial date's supposed to happen, she just buggers off to Spain. And I think that's the end of her, isn't it? End of her character, is it?
No. She comes back later on. It's 2020 when she disappears midway through, but she has a bit of a break. Yeah, that was...
So the prosecution doesn't have any witnesses, so the case falls apart.
It was a real build-up to the trial, and it felt like a bit of a cop-out ending. I mean, it went the way I wanted it to, because I didn't want Johnny to be going to prison, and I wanted there to be an opportunity for him.
Well, he does go.
He does eventually. I wanted there to be an opportunity for him and Johnny to rebuild these bridges, because I loved them so much. And there was that series of episodes had a lovely scene set in a hotel. And I think there was just a bonding moment of them kind of realising that it's worth giving this relationship, this marriage another punt. It was really, really well done.
They resolved to make the marriage work. Then we have a side quest where Jenny buys into a horse syndicate because the ladies' club puts together money to buy Tiny the horse.
Yeah, Jenny was involved in that one.
Tim's steed, but they pull out because it's too expensive. And then there's a bit more drama when Johnny thinks that Jenny is trying to encourage Kate to move to Bali, and also at the end of the year, Jenny feels guilty because Rita falls over at Christmas.
Yeah, Rita wants some time with Jenny, and Jenny's
like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
So she invites her to stay at the Rovers.
That was a weirdly quiet year, really, for Jenny, wasn't it? Considering she just made the position of the Rovers landlady, she didn't really have much in the way of stories in 2019, and maybe that was the early warning signs that we weren't going to be having a whole load of Rovers scenes, and the prospect that she would be heart and centre of general Weatherfield life was maybe not going to come true.
One thing I don't think I've really thought about, and I don't know that you have either, I don't think anyone really has, is what stories are there about the Rovers? When you're the landlady or landlord of the Rovers, what stories are there about that? And I don't really think there are that many.
Maybe you're right. I mean, it felt like Annie and Jack had their stories.
Yeah, but they had stories that were set in the Rovers, and it was, you know, part of the story that they were the landlord and the landlady. But it's just much more of a vehicle for drama to take place, and it's that, you know, the back room of the Rovers is just their living room most of the time. So that's where you get to see their drama take place.
You had little comedy antics, and I think the relationships between the landlord and landlady and then the rest of the bar staff have provided some real comedy highs over the years.
Yes, the bar team are a very important part of Coronation Street. But I don't think that being the landlord or landlady automatically gives you a story about anything. It's just what you choose to do. And unfortunately, Jenny becoming the landlady was at a very inauspicious time, because we're just about to get to 2020 and the period where everything changes for everybody around the whole world, and there's not very much opportunity to be a landlady, and it's taken Coronation Street years to return to a sense.
Well, they haven't completely returned.
Well, lots of people would argue that they haven't still. Yeah. So,
do you think, you know, we're now 7 years on from Jenny being the landlady? It's a long time she's been at the helm, isn't it?
It doesn't feel like it though, because of what happened.
Because we've seen so little. But do you think that she's going to be remembered as an iconic?
I think
Corrie landlady?
I honestly would love to see her have years more to come. I don't see why not.
No.
I really genuinely, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, so and so should be the landlady, thingy should be the landlady. They should sell to hear this and this and this.
It
like,
doesn't feel like it's time.
No, it's not time. She has barely begun.
Yeah, it's weird
because of Corona.
Even though it's been 7 years, which is, you know, fair. You know, Jack and Vera didn't make it anywhere near that long. Natalie Barnes was just a couple of years. The Stella and her family weren't there very long at all. But it just doesn't feel like she's had a fair shake of it.
Partly because of the pandemic, and partly also because of the vast expansion of the cast and the sets. So, you know, having the bistro and speed dial and everywhere else to just hang around in, it's the Rovers is just less
right
of a
about
hub.
That. Yeah.
Like when you watch very old, you know, original 60s episodes of Coronation Street, the only place you would really talk to somebody who was not your family would be the corner shop, the road outside the corner shop, and the Rovers, and that was it. Unless you bobbed around their house, you didn't talk to other people. And there were Rovers scenes in every episode, and everyone chatted and everyone spoke, and it was a big community feeling in there. And, you know, is it a true reflection of modern life? Probably. I do think that people go, I mean, obviously people go to pubs less now because the pubs are closing down.
It doesn't feel like shipping Jenny off and then getting someone in.
It's not going to change anything.
It's going to make any changes. It's not, you know.
I genuinely don't think there's anybody else in the cast now who would be as good
I think that I'd still quite like to maybe see Sally one day, just to see.
I just don't think she would be any good. I think Glenda would be an excellent, or interim, but I don't think that there's a depth there because.
No. Because there is no...
Because they haven't given her one.
No, and that was clearly what was the problem with...
Not Jodie Prender's fault. They just haven't written anything extra.
That was clearly one of the main problems with Stella when she became the landlady, that she just didn't have any meat to the bone. She was just like, hello, I'm new, I'm in charge now, and people didn't accept it. But having a character that, exudes Coronation Street and has been in the show for... on and off for 40 years.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Feels like she's earned it.
Apart from obviously Annie and Jack, do you have to have put the time in on the street to be a landlord and landlady? Because I really don't think that anyone else apart from maybe Maureen Lipman's character, whatever her face was, has ever come in and gone, hello, I'm now in charge.
Well, you had Mike and Fred and Dougie together in that little trio.
But Dougie was a newbie, but the other two weren't.
Mike had been in the show for a jolly long time, and Fred had been in it about 5-6 years at that point. Yeah. So relatively new, but not in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I just don't like the idea that because people are talking now about the Rovers is having its financial troubles, who's going to save it? Is Daniel going to buy it? Is somebody else going to swan in and take over? I just hate it.
Bloody hate that.
And I don't think, I really don't know what they would do with Jenny if she wasn't, because once you're the landlord or the landlady, you've reached the peak. The only way, literally the only way is down from there in terms of Coronation Street status. And I don't think that Jenny's ego would be able to sustain that. The only place that I could maybe see her fitting in is back in the cabin.
She needs to be in charge of something, and she should be in charge of the Rovers. And nobody can convince me there's anyone better to take that over. But I don't feel like she's reached her full potential, so I wouldn't be happy. But, we talk about Stella Price. They really stitched that character up by just launching her into that position with no prior warning at all, because that was like the only time that's ever happened.
Mm.
No, there's never ever been a character that just came in as the landlady.
No, not for a long stint.
I mean, Jack and Annie did, because that's how the show started. But they'd already been working there and living there for years, so that doesn't count at all.
Yeah, you had your occasional interim manager come in the 80s, but yeah.
Well, they weren't.
They weren't there.
They weren't nothing.
No. So 2020 then, COVID year, also the year of Coronation Street's 10,000th anniversary, and like I said earlier, it was lovely to have Jenny at the heart of that. She was the one that organised this trip to Blackpool for the ladies of the street to scatter Dennis's ashes, and they had that lovely scene at the end of the episode, her and Rita in the darkened Rovers. That was lovely. But yeah, the relationship, the Johnny and Jenny thing, took another real turn for the worse that year, because this was the Scott story, and I didn't really enjoy it, because we got to learn more about Johnny's history that felt a little bit shoehorned in, little bit we just pulled this out of nowhere to give him a dark past.
It felt like a retcon, even though there was no... It wasn't, because we didn't know one thing or another.
Yeah, and it just didn't meld with my idea of Johnny's personality, really. So basically, you got Jenny taking in this guy called Scott as a B&B guest. That's something that Jenny has added in some way to the Rovers.
But
she's
it's
made
weird,
her mark
though,
by opening it as a B&B for very occasional guests.
Sometimes she has a guest and sometimes she doesn't care. But you'd think that would be a super important way of raising money.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you another contribution that Jenny has made. Monday quiz.
Monday quizzes!
Yeah. 7 years of Monday quiz now. I think they sometimes forget to have it, to be fair.
But if you go in there and ask for an Uber Duber, you get a massive dirty look.
Yeah. So this Scott is now living in the Rovers for a bit. Johnny takes one look at him and is like, uh-oh. not this guy. He's clear that it's somebody who's had a bit of a to do with Johnny in his dark past. So Johnny's immediate reaction is to say to Jenny, look, let's go to visit Eva in France. Let's go. And they bog off for a little bit. He comes back she comes back on her own later in the year because he's so terrified of being around Scott that he just makes his excuse and stays abroad
so
during COVID.
Jenny can cope with.
So he eventually returns a couple of months later. Jenny is not happy that he's abandoned her for so long, and I suppose this is a little bit of a practice run, a dry run for being sole in charge of the Rovers, but it was when all of the COVID procedures were being carried out,
one
like the
way system and takeaway beers. Remember that?
Yeah. So what we learn about Johnny and Scott is that back in the day, back in the 80s, maybe I don't know, that they had committed a crime together. They had Johnny was the getaway driver, I think, and he had run over or hit and seriously injured somebody, a security guard, during this getaway.
I'm starting to think it was him that ran it over.
Yeah, maybe it was. I really didn't enjoy that because I thought that Johnny was a real dependable, nice, no secrets in the closet kind of guy.
It didn't make sense.
This really dampened his copybook for me.
You know that David's now a getaway driver as well. It can happen to the best of you.
That's silly, isn't it? That's ridiculous as well. But anyway, Scott says to Johnny, look, I want to rob the bistro. You in? You better be, otherwise I'm going to tell everybody what we got up to back in the past. And Johnny just gets mega stressed out about it, has another MS attack, because I told you it came up in most dramatic of situations, because this was when he was supposed to be robbing the bistro. And then he tells Jenny about what's happened, turns himself into the police station, there's a siege. It's all very, very dramatic.
Jenny gets taken
very
hostage.
Modern Corrie, yeah.
And that's not the last time.
Not the last time that she gets taken hostage in the Rovers, no. So in the aftermath of all this, basically, Johnny says to Jenny, look, I've put you through so much. We need to get a divorce. Let's just get on with it. So this really was the beginning of the end. Well, it wasn't even the beginning of the end. Maybe the middle of the end of Johnny and Jenny together. And as you alluded to earlier, this is when Daisy turns up, the never before mentioned stepdaughter. It was so funny because I remember that summer we'd met up with Sal and she says, oh, there's something coming soon that I don't know what you're going to think of, but they've put something in there for Jenny that's not been mentioned before and they're going to refer...
Well, it's because because we're like sticklers, aren't we?
Yeah.
About...
Corrie
retcons, and it's not a retcon.
It's not at all a retcon.
Well, we had this discussion, didn't we? What is a retcon and what counts as a retcon?
Yeah, it was a character that surely she would have mentioned at some point up to now, but she didn't. And then they have I'm going to mention her one episode, just off the cuff, and then a couple of weeks later, oh, look, here she is. I was just talking about you. But I think I forgive Coronation Street for doing it because what we've got, this brilliant twosome with Daisy and Jenny, is brilliant. And especially, now Johnny isn't in the show anymore, you're left with this brilliant twosome. And without her, Jenny would very much be alone.
Yeah.
So it's lovely having
a confidant.
Yeah, she does need a confidant. And I think it has turned into a little bit of it's the Daisy show and Jenny is her sidekick rather than the other way round. Yeah.
And also, they're at each other's throats a lot more than I would like. Do you not think?
Yeah. I think Jenny has got Daisy's back sometimes, and she likes the drama. And I mean, she's especially sticking her nose in it at the moment with this "Who's the Daddy" thing.
Well, ever since that Daisy decided to steal the money, they've kind of been rivals almost.
Yeah, but it's difficult to because had they been in touch at all, I can't remember. I think they maybe said that they had a little bit in this very long interim period, but
anyway,
I don't know.
So she's not a fan of Johnny.
No, and we hated this at the beginning.
No, you did.
Yeah, I really, really hated the fact that Daisy wanted to.
Well, she just
encouraged this split up between the two.
She was always trying to get them to break up.
Yeah, I mean, from Daisy's point of view, this guy had cheated on her stepmum with the local tart,
and now he's a criminal.
Yeah.
So anyway, he gets arrested. He signs the pub over to Jenny. Daisy stays to help run it, and then when Johnny gets released on bail, they kind of rekindle again.
Yeah, this was supposed to be Richard Hawley's last year on the show. This was 2020. This was the 60th anniversary of Coronation Street. And by this point, Richard had said, I've had enough. I want to leave it. I want to go. And you could kind of see that in the amount that he was in it. I think that the original plan for him was always to go out the way that he did, down the sinkhole. But this was going to be
the sinkhole was going to be
the grand spectacle with the 60th anniversary, and fortunately Coronation Street were able to persuade Richard to stay on another year, a whole year longer than he'd originally intended to. But there was definitely
the cracks showed a bit, because
there was a lot less of Johnny on screen in his final year.
It would definitely have been a lot more romantic and dramatic if their relationship had been rock solid when he died. Or, they had... But anyway, he just kind of, farted around for a year, didn't he?
Yeah, well, do you want to have a quick rundown of Johnny's final year?
Yeah, so Johnny gets sentenced to prison, and Daisy tries to get Johnny to move on. She won't abandon him. And he starts seeing visions, and Johnny does, of Aidan.
Yeah, he does. Except, unlike modern Coronation Street, they didn't invite Shane Ward back.
He would have just been in the show for months.
Yeah,
if they had been making it now. Sharon Bentley comes back, and Jenny's very suspicious. She was another foster child.
Yeah, she was a former
Rita.
foster child. So back in the early 80s, 83, 84 or so, Rita and Len fostered Sharon.
Yeah.
And she had made sporadic appearances in the show since then. I think she'd appeared in 1999 again, then disappeared off. And she was another kind of wrong un, wasn't she? In 99, Rita had handed the cabin to Sharon as a early inheritance, and maybe a way of keeping her on her side. Sharon then sold it off to somebody, and
Rita had to buy it back, didn't she?
Yeah, I think so.
She's not very happy with
and
her.
So the last time that Rita had seen Sharon, it was on incredibly bad terms. So there was a lot of parallels that could be drawn between Jenny and Sharon, and I loved the idea of having these two foster daughters together on the show at the same time, almost kind of competing rivals for Rita's affection and cash.
Yeah, both wanting to be the only child.
Yeah. Because they were the last time they're in it. I mean, and these were women in their 40s or 50s at this point, but still a little bit of squabbling. But so, she's been through it, and she's turned to the dark side even more since we've seen her last, hasn't she?
Well, yeah, because before she was just Sharon Bentley, but now she is actually the aunt of Harvey Gaskell as well.
She came into the show as Sharon Gaskell. Then she got married to Ian Bentley in 99, and so she was still Sharon Bentley at this point.
But all along this has been who she was, but it's just revealed to us in 2021, and this is when it starts kind of going downhill with all the drugs and the
I
the
can't
gangsters.
believe that Harvey has been a gangster on the show for 4 years now.
It feels very boring now.
And he's how many episodes has he actually been in?
I know,
it's just
he's
his
like
name.
a ghost. He's like a ghost. He's like Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
It's like Jack the Ripper is for 3 months he ran around murdering people, and people haven't shut up about it since. It's the same with Harvey Gaskell. So he's got it in for Leanne and Simon over a drugs ring and cuckooing and everything.
Yeah, Simon was his little county lines boy,
guy.
Wasn't he?
We learned about cuckooing in County Lines, and that's Coronation Street doing their awareness raising for the year, which they'd stopped, but no, we have to learn every time we watch it. Jenny grows closer to Ronnie Bailey, the uncle. Sleeps with him in a moment of madness, but then Johnny comes back from prison.
I've had things to get fuming about in Coronation Street this week, but Jenny going to bed with Ronnie.
Well, I think she's a flirty bird, isn't she?
And the fact that it was just she'd been loyal and committed to Johnny throughout his months of incarceration, and she just couldn't keep her knickers up just for the final days for him to come back, just because he flexed his.
Well, he's got amazing biceps
and biceps
and a hat.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd mind now that time has passed. Maybe
are you over it?
Maybe I'm over it. Maybe
don't know if that's true.
if things go south with Ronnie and Debbie, because let's face it, we barely ever see them together. maybe.
Well, Jenny needs
Jenny
a lad,
and Ronnie.
a man. Don't we?
Well, yes, she does.
And we've heard, there are not very many men to go spare on Corrie at the moment.
No.
Where are all the eligible bachelors? Why is it, just ladies everywhere? So anyway, Daisy suspects what's happened and she starts to use it to her advantage. She gets Ronnie to help sell double glammy products because that was fun, wasn't it?
Oh, that was the MLM scheme that she got herself worked up in.
Jenny threatens to throw her out. Daisy opens up about how she's got nobody left because her family's abandoned her. And that's very sad. And then Jenny works out what Sharon's up to and her part in the drugs ring. And then this is when Sharon tases her. And, she shouts "Have it" first, and then she tases her in the bum.
Well, she tases her first, and then she says "Have it," and then she tases her for a second time. But
right,
yeah, proper another. That is a proper modern Corrie meme, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that
was a camp moment.
Yeah, I did enjoy Sharon, but I think that having her go into gangster territory, looking back on it, was a bit of a shame, really, because she was never like it at all in the 80s, and they just made her progressively worse and worse. I like how Jenny eventually came out on top, and she was the one that helped get Sharon out of Weatherfield, but I don't like the gangs on Coronation Street. It is a bit much, really. And is there any coming back from this? I don't know.
Sharon finds out about Jenny and Johnny, threatens to blackmail her. Jenny is forced to confess to Johnny about what has happened. And then it gets out to Rita that Sharon had been up to all these no good things. And so she sort of sees her off. Mm-hmm. Get lost. Then Johnny declares his marriage to Jenny is over. So Jenny
again? How many times has he given it has said that we're all over during this?
Jenny buys him out of the pub and they part on good terms. But, Jenny's a good-looking woman. Her bed's not cold for long. She attracts the attentions of Leo, who's an engineer working on the sinkhole in the Platt's garden. I
do remember liking the fact that Johnny and Jenny parted on good terms, and he did ever so often come back to the pub.
He was always lagging around, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that as viewers we had any inkling that Richard Hawley was leaving at this point.
I don't think so.
It was very sad that their marriage was over.
No,
I know when Johnny died, we went into that week thinking, I think this feels like it might be it for Johnny, just because we kind of recognised the signs of him making peace with things, and anyway.
So she's nervous about this relationship because there's an age gap.
The other direction this time.
And Johnny's very jealous. And then the sinkhole happens, a disaster, oh my goodness. Jenny's looking for Leo because, this was his fault. She probably wants to blame him. She falls into the sewers and then Johnny follows her as well, trying to rescue her. But they reunite underground in the dark, in the wet, in the damp, with the drips and the brick and the water. And they rekindle, they kind of like... It's not like they're going to get back together.
It does. They kind of recommit and they realise that through all of this mega drama that actually...
He could be dead, but I'd rather be with you.
Yeah, it was like they realised that at the end of the day...
They love each other.
They do love each other. And this was utterly tragic. This was like a proper bittersweet moment in Coronation Street,
There's nothing we can't get through together apart from this thing that's happening right now. Because even though Shona tries to help, the drama is too much for Johnny. And he dies, and he hears, as he's dying, he hears Aidan's voice, which was actually a really nice touch. And Jenny's sad, and she starts drinking again.
More boozing for Jenny. That was brilliant. I know that it hasn't gone down particularly well with the fans over the years, the whole Coronation Street saga, and it was a little over the top, wasn't it?
No.
But the amount of... The amount that went into recreating or to creating those underground sets,
great.
The raising and lowering water, it was the walls that went up and down to make it look like the water was going up. Sally Ann Matthews, absolute masterful performance there. Both of them did, but it was such a lovely, lovely way for them to end. If they had to
drowning in sewage.
If they had to end.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was a really lovely but tragic one.
I think I said at the time it was like one of the few almost comprehensive love stories in Coronation Street, because if you were to do a lot of like reading out how a romance goes, it's all a lot of, and then they fell out and then they got back together, and there is a bit with that with Jenny and Johnny, but it does feel like an actual story. It feels
I totally believe their connection.
Well, not just that, but like if you were to write it in a book, it would be a, it's a plot, isn't it? How they got together and how they ended and all the bits in between. It feels like an actual story. It doesn't feel like a series of random events that are only connected by the fact that they're the same character that it happens to every time.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like some of them just don't make any real sense, or they're not interesting. Like, would you be able to make a movie about Sarah and Adam?
No.
Do you see what I'm saying? Can you see the difference? This feels like it could have been a story in by itself.
So many of the Coronation Street relationships, you see them getting together,
and
you don't really get to see much of them, and then you see them split up. But it really did feel like we saw Johnny and Jenny ups and downs through thick and thin, and it ended on this high, low. I don't know what it is. This very dramatic.
It had a satisfying ending.
Yeah, if he had to die.
Yeah.
It was a very satisfying ending. It really was.
Now, that year, because he died, Jenny gets left everything from Johnny in his will, which is weird, because what has happened to it?
I don't know.
She's spent it all, hasn't she? She's frittered it away.
On the sofa, yeah.
Well, Carla's annoyed about it, and I am too, because she kept that money. She wouldn't be in trouble now, would she?
Nope.
Well, she sticks her nose in Daisy's love life, and then at the end of the year, she decides to give things another go with Leo.
Yeah. Leo.
What a hunk.
What are your kind of looking back on it thoughts about Jenny and Leo together? Did they get together too soon? Was it a bit of a rebound romance?
Well, let's
for Jenny?
think about what significant others have been. She's been out with Kevin and Martin.
Yeah. She's been Patrice, remember?
Oh, Patrice.
French Patrice.
She's been out with Leo and Johnny and
She's
Ronnie.
not had, loads of suitors,
She's
has
very
she?
flirty.
She went out with the dentist for a little bit in 93.
She doesn't have a type.
No.
She really does not have a type. Old, young, black, white, mostly men, as far as we know.
Yeah, well, you never know these
Not
days.
on Coronation Street.
No.
So, she could end up with anybody. I don't know that... It didn't feel like it was a long-term thing with Leo, but...
I think that Jenny was kind of saw it as, this could be quite fun. I'm sure there was some scenes of her with Leo's mates and feeling a little bit of...
out of place because they didn't get the references the young folks speak of these days.
But no, I really, Leo was set up as... It was never going to be long term, because I think as soon as Leo came into it, it was we're going to kill him in a year's time. Stephen Reed's going to come along and bump him off. So it was never supposed to last. And he was very boring. And when he did end up dying, and Daisy said he was a bit boring though, didn't he? It was like, yeah, he was. So I'm very, very glad that we didn't get anything long term with Leo. I
really think, and I hope this is true, that that's something that people won't say when I die.
Me too.
Bit boring.
Now,
I think, to me, of all the people that she's gone out with this whole entire time, my absolute favourite was Uncle Stephen, and I can't believe it was for such a brief period of time. But they could have been such a fantastic couple if it were not for the murders. And I say that about lots of famous couples.
He was definitely a charmer, but he was not. He was not the solid, reliable guy that Johnny was. I'm sorry.
But that was more fun. Do you see what I mean?
It was fun, but
they both had a good-looking face. They both had great hair. What more do you want from a couple?
I don't feel that we got to see enough of them to be able to make a judgment.
Nice and tall.
I could have definitely seen them lasting longer. And when they killed off Stephen, I think we did feel it was a little bit too soon.
And we were super into the idea of him being the landlord of the Rovers.
Yeah, just for a little bit, having a serial killer.
And also a Canadian behind the bar.
Yeah. Well,
but it didn't happen, did it?
No. So this was, this was still a few years away. 2022 was all about losing Leo.
Yeah, because she realises that She knows his dad.
Oh yeah, she did. Yeah, this is where Teddy comes in, wasn't it? At the beginning of
she's like,
of 22, and is she at the hospital or something? And then Leo's been sent to hospital for something, and then his dad comes along, and she's like, "Oh hello, I remember you from school. You fancied me at school," and that adds to the feelings of awkwardness, age gap things between the two of them.
Yeah, it was a bit strange.
But anyway, she gets over it, and she eventually invites Leo to move in with her. He just doesn't really get up to much. There was a couple of episodes where he was making terrible craft beer, but really just waiting in the wings to be bumped off, which is what happens to them at the end of the year.
Isn't that what a lot of people do? Spend their life? Is this you? You spend your life waiting to die? Well, then start living, baby, and get a job in Canada.
Yeah, Leo gets a job in Canada, doesn't he? And he and Jenny kind of go over the idea of... And again, it's just they keep throwing into Jenny's story the threat of her emigrating, and it just gets me a bit worried.
But don't bother getting a job in Canada if you're in Canada already. That's boring. Get a job somewhere else, but probably not America.
No, don't go down there. So Leo notices, he starts to twig that Stephen Reed is getting up to no good. He's up to something, and because unbeknownst to Leo for a while, Jenny and Stephen had shared an illicit kiss, hadn't they? And he finds out as well that Leo... What is it? The story was that Stephen was saying that he had loads of money, but actually he was stony broke. And Leo kind of hunts him down one night and finds that he's sleeping in his car.
Well, he's doing all these shady business deals, and he's like faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
And Leo's completely on to him.
Yeah, and he ends up telling that to the Platts, and Stephen fires back by revealing about this kiss that he'd had with Jenny. Before long, to cut a long story short, Leo's dead in a bin, thanks to Stephen, and Jenny is left to assume that he's gone to Canada without her. So that was all very tragic. Then we have Teddy turning up again, Leo's dad, later on in the year, worried that he's not heard from his son. And Stephen manages to put him off the scent for a little while by texting from Leo's phone that he's gone hiking. But the 2022 ends with Teddy being hit by a van and Stephen thinking that he's managed to
sort that out.
Sort it out, but no, because on the stroke of midnight on New Year's Day, eyes spring open, Teddy's alive.
Teddy's fine.
Yeah.
So he's recuperating, and 2023 was Jenny's biggest year ever. She was in 189 appearances, joint with Daisy.
Yeah.
And
it was her biggest year in terms of appearances, but it still felt to me like she was there in there was lots of stuff going on in the Rovers and a lot of stories.
She wasn't a catalyst.
She was she was in other people's stories. I mean, I suppose the closure of the Rovers was a Jenny story in a way.
Well, there's a lot, not very many characters are actually driving the plot at any one time, you know. So, but this was definitely Stephen's story. 2023 was the year of Stephen Reed.
For sure.
And so Teddy moves into the Rovers to sort of recuperate from being hit with a car, and he's remembering things and too many things, and so Stephen has to hit him over the head with a stapler.
A stapler?
A hole punch.
Thank you.
Stephen is convincing Jenny that he's gone to be with Leo, and she's got no reason not to believe him. So spring goes on, and Jenny is sort of being courted by Stephen and Owen, who is a guy who is the partner of the American company that wants to buy Nipper Snapper, which is Underworld's brain dead sub brand that sells crappy clothes for people with no sense of humour.
Yeah.
That Michael came up with.
Not me.
And Stephen's trying to put her off of Owen because he doesn't like him, because Owen's onto him as well. And he also puts him off of Jenny by calling her a bunny boiler. Meanwhile, Gemma's hard up, so Jenny convinces her to go and work with Henry, who's now working at the brewery, but
he's been working at the brewery.
Executive.
Yeah, he's risen up the ranks a little bit since last we saw him.
Jenny lets Daisy know that she's having financial difficulties because, COVID and bar prices and food, and so she's having to reduce the portions, and she ends up biting the bullet when and contacting Philip Newton about investing in the pub, and Henry agrees to bail the Rovers out if Gemma agrees to come and work for him as his PA at the brewery. But then, before all that really happens, Newton really gets bought out by the Waterford group, and they get transferred to them, and they're not quite as into Jenny as everybody else was.
No.
Jenny and Stephen come back from a trip to Paris, and she's horrified to discover that Leo is not actually in Canada and his body has been dug up in Weatherfield. She's trying to tell Teddy about it and get in touch with him, and
obviously he's dead as well.
He's dead as well, so she has to report him missing to the police. And Waterford, meanwhile, closes the Rovers for refurbishment, which again, another big pile of nothing in the end.
Yeah, it really was. That
like
this whole story in
2023
of the Rovers closing, it was made out to be something huge at the time, and all of the bar staff were kicked out, weren't they? And
there was that big scene of them all standing sadly.
Yeah, it felt like the end of an era at a time. But equally, the opportunity... We knew that, I don't think anybody thought that this was the end for the Rovers or that it was going to transform into something unrecognisable. It was clearly going to come back and be exactly the same as it had been before. But I think
that was one of my criticisms, really, because there was no danger of, like, more than anybody ever, more than the most safe character and with the most safe actor who has just signed a year's contract, walking into a building with an anvil poised above their heads. More even than that, that Rovers is completely safe.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing bad that's ever going to happen to that building.
No, but people would be forgiven for assuming that this was a bit of a refresh in terms of the show, because by this point it was very notable that there weren't many Rovers scenes, that there weren't many background artists in the Rovers, that it was all feeling a little bit empty, and the community hub that it once was had completely evaporated. But it kind of still feels now that it's open again that not much has changed, hasn't it? It was an opportunity.
They're working harder at doing scenes with lots of characters in the Rovers.
There have been more.
It just does feel like it feels as though it's more of an effort and more difficult to do now, and it also feels like sometimes they think, well, I've got, I don't know, Kevin Webster for 74 episodes this year. I want to give him a story, so I'm not going to put him in the background of the Rovers because then I won't be able to use him later. And I don't know how true that is, but it does feel a bit like the Rovers is being sacrificed for a lot of other production reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stephen and Jenny move into Rita's flat together, and Stephen's saying, "Oh, let's go to holiday in Thailand. Let's get away from all the drama."
Yeah, he just wants to get away before he gets his murders uncovered.
Carla is on the case, and she warns Jenny that the tickets that he's booked are one way, and so she kind of like is onto him, and so he decides to go by himself, but realises that she's pinched his passport, so he takes her hostage in the Rovers, which is all boarded up and crapped up. And he lets her go, tries to escape, gets run over by a car and dies.
Sad times, Gemma, for your lovely relationship between the two of them.
Uncle Stephen is dead, and it's all Peter Barlow's fault.
He was a lot of fun. He was
brilliant, and I did really enjoy him and Jenny together. So Jenny's determined that she's going to buy this pub back, but she can't get a loan. But luckily, Daisy finds out where Stephen has stolen the money and stashed it, and she gets all the access codes, and so she ropes Jenny into stealing this money, £247,000. Jenny's like, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't," but Daisy convinces her it's a great idea. Who's going to lose? Doesn't matter.
This
we'll
also
pay Carla
flies
back
in the face
because this is the money that Stephen has stolen off of Carla.
This flies in the face of Jenny's current reaction this week, where she's willing to, at all costs, get this pub for herself.
What do you mean it flies in the face? Well, it doesn't. She's always wanted the Rover. She's always done really terrible things.
Before, it felt like whenever it was 2 years ago, it felt it was Daisy convincing Jenny that this was okay to do, to steal the money, because Jenny had a bit of a moral backbone to her, thinking, no, maybe that's wrong. But now she's like, yeah, let Daniel believe that he's not the baby's father. If we can get some money off of him to buy the Rovers, so what?
But once you've done something bad, it's easier to do something worse. And I don't think... as far as...
Once you've nearly lost something before, you'll work even harder to try to stop yourself losing it again.
As far as bad things go, what do you think is worse, though? Stealing a dead man's money or letting somebody think it's... letting someone else let someone else think that it's not their, their baby when it's not.
Yeah, it wasn't even a dead man's money, though, was it? It was a dead man's money that he had stolen from a very alive and kicking Carla.
Well, alive and kicking then, but who knows? She could have died of a kidney explosion. Anyway, they decide to steal it and let everybody think that they've got a bank loan, and then they open the Rovers once more, just in time for New Year.
New Year and fake CGI fireworks, yeah. So 2024, we're kind of getting close at last to the end of the Jenny saga so far, and that really was marked by a massive decrease in the amount of Jenny that we saw on our screens last year, didn't we? And even Sally Ann Matthews has made it clear that she's wished for more to do on screen, and we certainly join her in that sentiment. Yeah.
Well, she's the landlady. She should be in every episode.
You got a bit of bickering between her and Daisy about who was in charge of the pub. Then you get...
I was expecting, so everyone was expecting so much more of 2024 and the Rovers, because you had this big story about stealing the money to take over the pub, and then you had this big rivalry between these two big women, big personalities, Jenny and Daisy, this great relationship that makes everything even more, fraught when they turn on one another, and then it just went to nothing.
Yeah, because eventually Bethany finds out that they've stolen the money, and then she tells Carla, I think, and Carla's obviously mightily peeved to find out that they've robbed her blind, and she declares herself new owner of the Rovers, and they're going to be paying her back. I don't know how long they think that it's going to take to pay her back, or where on earth this money's going to come from, but Carla agrees to go with it, and she sets herself up as the very much sleeping partner in charge.
Whoa, she's like, I decide. If I think of something, then you've got to do it.
But we don't see any of that, because we don't really see any of Jenny and Daisy during the year.
This like a week ago or something, Jenny does make a reference to how much money she's giving Carla, and she says, I gave her £90 the other week. £90 for a balance of 247,000. It's like you wouldn't get away with that as a mortgage. Yeah. You should be paying hundreds and hundreds. So it's Bethany's fault that it all comes out.
Yeah,
and that puts a paid to the kind of bickering between Daisy and Jenny, because they're not actually either of them involved in charge anymore.
No, Jenny kind of, for the rest of the year, just sets herself up as the person who gets involved in Daisy's love life, and should you be going out with Daniel, should you be going out with Ryan, having a bit of a gossip about it, sometimes giving her good advice, sometimes giving her absolutely terrible advice, and she definitely loses a bit of agency, and she is 100% just a side character in Daisy's stories by the end of 2024, isn't she? Which needs to change. And she ended up only making 68 episodes, or appearing in 68 episodes in 2024, which feels nothing. Although, I mean, to compare to, in 2015 she was in 40 episodes, and that was the year that she was only in 6 months, so I guess she was in it a lot more in that 40 episodes. 2017 she was only in 79 episodes though, and it didn't feel like that was a low year for Jenny. It was really 2018 when things blew up. That's where she had 139 episodes, and I think that the episode counts remained high ever since. And I would hope that it's safe to say that there's nothing to worry about her episode appearances, because everybody has their ups and downs, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, Charlotte Jordan, Daisy's character, she was also in a huge amount of episodes in 2023, and we didn't see half as much of her last year. They just have they can't have everybody in it all at the same time. Although, if anybody should be at it more than anybody else, I would say it's whoever's in charge of the Rovers.
What the year before then, it was Shona was in it the most, and all she really did was butter balms.
Yeah, in the back of the
and so you can be in it quite a lot and not have loads to do, but obviously the actors always want to be doing something cool and dramatic. it's a shame.
Yeah. And this year we've just seen a little bit more of the money situation. It felt like it had been forgotten about for a lot of last year, hadn't it? But now it's reared its head again because Carla's demanding that they pay up because she needs it for a kidney transplant, and now now the heater's back on again, and Jenny's trying to get the money off of Daniel. So I don't really like the idea of Daniel owning the Rovers, but equally
I don't know what's going to happen with it.
He is a legacy character in a way. You know, he's part of the Barlow clan, and you know, we've had Barlows behind the bar at the Rovers before in with Peter, but he doesn't feel like, you know, we're not going to be seeing Daniel there as a landlord figure, is he? He's literally just putting the cash in.
Well, doing what every millennial does best, which is spending their parents' money on property.
Yeah. So do you think there's any risk at all that we lose Jenny from the Rovers?
I really would not want that to happen. There's no sign of it at the moment, although everyone talks about it, because I think it's one of the things that you talk about if you're a Corrie fan. But, you know, Coronation Street has made some very high profile kind of really stupid decisions. And it wouldn't surprise me if this was one of them, but I would find it very difficult to be excited about the prospect of anybody else behind the bar. I would be more excited for them to say, we're going to actually take this seriously and give, you know, Jenny a proper big role for a year.
Yeah. I wouldn't be adverse to the idea of putting her in the cabin, but then, you know, the cabin itself is pretty much a retired set.
It's not been seen for like a year.
But is that because of who's in charge of it now? And we're not having much Brighton, so therefore we're not having much cabin. It does, you know, there's... Yes, in real life, corner shops like the cabin are closing left, right and centre, but I wouldn't say that they're so much a thing of the past that it doesn't make sense for Corrie to have it as a shop anymore.
Most corner shops exist in the same amount that they used to. They're just not owned by what would normally be, you know, a couple that lived. It's all brands now, isn't it? Even the ones that look like an old school janky, you know, tiled floor, sticky counter place is owned by like a one-stop.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, I suppose the thing is, Rita doesn't actually own the cabin, and she's not owned the cabin for about 15 years because Norris bought it and then Brian bought it off of her. So the idea that Jenny could somehow
get it off
Rita, it doesn't make sense. But maybe what the future is, if Jenny doesn't stay in charge of the pub, is that she somehow gets the cabin and turns it into something else, because they clearly don't think they need a newsagents anymore. We get to see the corner shop every now and then, and maybe it is a bit of a case of this place isn't big enough for both of them, even though they managed with a corner shop and a newspaper shop side by side for many years. I don't know. Maybe that's a possibility.
All I want from this is, you know, more Jenny behind the bar, more Rovers stuff, more scenes there, and I don't know how you're going to get to it.
Yeah, I just hate the idea that some of the real Corrie stalwarts are being overlooked in favour of the younger, dare I say, cheaper characters.
I don't think it's unfair to say, because I don't think it's a reflection on the talent of the people who are the younger, newer characters, because I do think they're incredibly talented, but I do think that they're being used tactically because they're cheaper. And that really sucks, because I've said many times that, you know, soaps are unique because of the fact that you watch characters' whole lives before your eyes. You know, you grow with these characters, you watch them, some of them you watch them get born, you know, and then have children of their own. And with a character like Jenny, who's the 8th longest running current character, this is heritage that you are going to lose if you're not careful, because the cast, you know, people might get fed up, people might get too ill to work. You really got to look after the cast that you have, and look after your heritage and the history of the show, and classic characters like Jenny, who've been in it for so long, are important, part of the history of the show.
Yeah.
You can't just be having new people all the time and they have them in it for a year or two and then somebody else new.
Yeah, unfortunately, it just seems like their hands are tied by ITV and the purse strings at the moment, doesn't it? So there's only so many of the big names that they can have.
But it's one of those
on the books at once.
And the other thing too is the time and how long it takes and what it takes out of you. And people really don't want to hear it and they don't believe it. But when you're carrying the show for a year, when you're the major character, the most viewed, the most number of appearances, it takes it out of you, and you can't do that. It's just not possible for there to be a character like an Annie Walker or a Bette Lynch anymore, who's in it all the time, and doing everything and every story, always there. It's just not possible year on year on year.
Yeah.
In 1 year, yeah, but you can't ask that of people because you're running 6 episodes a week, and you be asking people to be working. They can't even work that much. It's like not legally possible for them to work that much. I think that the max they can do is 12. Is it 12 hours?
I do, yeah.
And you've also got lines as well to learn when you're not there. I know people don't want to hear it because they all think that acting's not a real job and it's not hard, but it is hard work, and you can't maintain the output that Coronation Street would need you to do if you were to be the main character every year.
Yeah, you just can't.
That's why the cast is still so big, even though we all know it should. We don't want it to be that big because we want it to focus more on a few people.
Yeah, I just really want her to have a big A story of her own.
Deserves it.
Front page
like
of the soap mags.
Sort of level.
Yeah, and she did make front page of the soap mags, especially during the Stevens saga.
Yeah. Well, she's been on and off the front, but
it
proper
feels,
story. That's Jenny's story, Jenny.
It feels to me like since Johnny's gone, the character has not. She's been there and she's been part of other people's stories, and it's been a lot more plot driven. Like the whole of the relationship with Leo was very plot driven in that she would be widowed from him, or for lack of a better term. And I'd really like the showrunners to think, what's Jenny mean? What's she about? What would be a perfect story for her? What's going to show her at her best? Because she is a proper brilliant old school classic, fun. Give her a fun story. Don't give her something that's going to mean she's going to cry all the time.
You can't have that.
Don't give her a horrible illness, please. Gosh,
oh no!
Don't.
What if she gets syphilis?
I just want her to be happy. I just want her to be happy.
I know, but you
have a lovely husband.
You don't understand how the show works.
I know. After all this time, but anyway, that's it for Jenny.
The main takeaway from this is that we love Jenny. She's brilliant, and we want more. Please, we want to do another in 10 years' time. We want to do another catch up for you guys, and it's going to have to be 4 hours long because of all the cool stuff that she's done.
It's just so brilliant to have seen her come from a character that we had no connection to whatsoever.
Well, it's sort of like a trivia kind of question character where it's like, do you remember there was a character, to like the landlady of the Rovers?
Yeah. What a journey. I've
been there every step of the way.
Seeing her grow. As we said earlier, Sally Ann Matthews has been absolutely wonderful to us over the years.
Yeah.
Eternally grateful for that, and I hope that there is a bright future for Jenny, because there really, really should be. She's amazing, and there aren't many characters in the show at the moment that have got that proper old school Corrie.
She is iconic.
Vibe.
She's iconic.
It's like, make good use of her, and have her as your poster girl for the show, honestly. Let's see, and as I say, maybe let's come back in 10 years' time and see what she's been getting up to since.
Well, there we go. That's the end of that.
Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you love Jenny as well, and hope that it's been fun to reminisce over some of those stories that she's been getting up to in the past decade. So,
bye.
See you next time. Bye bye.